Benoni defense. You're about to learn everything about the Benoni defense. The opening moves, the middle game plans, the theory, everything. In addition to that, if you haven't gotten my book as yet, this is your chance to get it. Send the word book to this email because very soon we're going to be announcing 3 progress calls where I'm going to be meeting with everyone who has the book, and then we're going to be talking about their progress so far. And you guys are going to be hearing about their progress so far. But if you're trying to understand the Benoni, watch this full video. Apply what I teach and watch your ratings goes through the roof. Kicking things off in the 500 region, today I'm going to be showing you guys the Benoni defense. Now, the Benoni defense could be very aggressive, very dynamic, very positional, but it all depends on how the opponent respond to our move pawn to c5. For example, if they play pawn to d5 trying to gain space, it becomes very aggressive and very dynamic. If they play pawn to e3 just to support the pawn, which is what the opponent is playing, then it becomes more positional. And it becomes positional because once we take on d4 and then they decide to take back with the pawn, haven't seen anyone took with the queen, because if they take with the queen, knight c6, and that's just a free tempo. Oh, okay. This guy decided not to take anything. So he's basically allowing us to take another pawn. And it does mean that I'm ahead by a pawn, by the way, guys, but we still have to look deeper on what's happening. We're also giving the opponent development, so it definitely has to keep that in mind. But from here, let's just focus on castling. Maybe I'm going to go e6, d5, play with the isolated pawn. Even though usually the goal is to give white the isolated pawn, but now if I have the isolated pawn, I'm already ahead by a pawn, but I'm not going to lose the pawn. Sometimes having an isolated pawn has pros and cons, and throughout this video, you guys are going to be understanding how I'm able to punish the opponent's isolated pawn. And then if I get an isolated pawn, how I play with the iso pawn. Now, he had a lead in development, but now he's making unnecessary pawn moves. I guess he thinks I'm trying to put my knight here for some weird reason. But hey, let's just develop. I'm going to go e6 so that way I'm able to play d5, because usually it's important to have a pawn controlling the center of the board. He's still making more pawn moves. Maybe he wants to chase away my knight, which I don't care. Let's just control the center of the board. Because if he attacks my knight, I'm going to move. It's not like he's gaining tempo by moving his pieces. Like he's just moving his pawns. Okay, bishop moves to e2. So this is where he wants to develop and castle. So let's do the same. Let's develop the bishop, get the king out the center of the board. Okay, he develops the knight. One thing I want you guys to notice is how he has a bishop and a knight in a pawn fork pattern, which means if a pawn goes to d4, it's a fork. However, I need to count. If I play d4, I have 2 pieces covering d4, but he has 1, 2, 3 pieces covering d4. Like just that information alone tells me that I should not put the pawn on d4. So with that being said, I'm just going to get my king out the center of the board. Okay, he also castle, and from here I'm trying to finish my development. This bishop isn't really doing much. I don't want to put the bishop on d7 because the queen is no longer going to be guarding d5. So I'm just going to play pawn to b6, bishop to b7, just so that my rooks are connected. It's not really the best place piece on b7 since the pawn is going to be in the way, but sometimes you'll have a bad piece, and eventually, after just playing, then that piece could eventually join the game. For example, if I put my bishop on b7, eventually move the knight, eventually take this R push, then my bishop would be on a nice diagonal. Okay, he finally decides to take. Let's just take back with the pawn, and I may not play bishop to b7 anymore. Since he took on d5, now my bishop could always go to f5 or g4, and this is why on, bro. Learn to count, bro. Learn to count. And I know you're watching this video because he just sent me a message saying, "Oh, I watched your videos. I'm so excited to play against you." Learn to count, brother. How many pieces? You see, say, bet he's not gonna make another mistake like this. Bro, I have 1, 2 pieces covering the square. You're attacking the square with 2 pieces. If you have the same amount of attackers as defenders, you should not make the capture because that's not how it works. You need to have more so that way you can make the capture. That's the only way you're going to win material, because if it's 2v2, then it means it's just equal. It's like it's a fair fight. Don't expect to win material when it's a fair fight. Lock in, bro. All right, knight is now centralized. Keep in mind that I'm the one who is ahead in material, and the guy's just like, bro, you know what? I don't mind that you're ahead in material. I'm feeling kind today, and I think we should just trade all the pieces off the board. So if that's what he wants, I'll just gonna go for the trade. Like knight takes e3, knight takes c6. Nah. Let's just take on c6. I want to take on e3 as well as c6, but that's not gonna happen. Let's just go for some more trades. Bishop to f6. If he takes, we're not going to take with the queen because that's going to leave the knight unprotected. So if he takes my bishop, I'm just going to take with the knight. And I'm also offering up a queen trade. Remember, guys, once you're ahead in material, it's going to make the game so easy once you just start trading pieces. So what I'm expecting from him is to like move his queen away so that way the trade does not happen. And I should still try to go for the trade. But, lower rated players, they usually just trade. Like once a trade is there, they're going to take the trade. All right, he didn't trade, but he puts the queen on d3. The guy's like, okay, I'm not gonna take. I'm gonna let you take. He's saying to take is a mistake, but hey, I'm gonna do it, bro. Let's finally finish our development. After so many moves, after 17 moves, I'm just moving my bishop. But it's fine. This is a winning endgame. Like every trade that I get, I'm gonna keep taking it until I trade every piece off the board, and then the game just becomes so easy to win. Okay, he puts his rook on a file. Let's put this rook on the file first. Attack the unprotected bishop. Moves the bishop out the way, we put the other rook on the file, and then now we're going for the trades. Okay, another rook is on the file. Let's just trade. That's a check. Trying to find some more ways to trade. King activity is crucial in the end game, by the way, guys. Let's get the king over. And I'm also trying to move my rook forward, and I'm not trying to get back rank checkmate in any ways. I'm also trying to go bishop d5, and I don't want him to pin. But you guys know the drill. You guys know the plan. I'm just going to be trading the pieces. Like, that's the only plan. It's nothing deeper than this. Pawn to a4 also allows rook to d4, which attacks the unprotected bishop. And because the bishop and the pawn is on the same line, if he moves the bishop out the way, then I'm going to be able to take the pawn. So I am expecting him to protect the bishop so that way he don't lose the pawn, but then I hit him with bishop d5, and now he's met with you either trade the bishop or lose the pawn. So he moved the bishop out the way. Let's grab the pawn. Now I'm also attacking this pawn. And yes, guys, we're in the end game. That's what we do in the end game. We try to attack the opponent's pawns. And then I'm going to have two pass pawns after this, which means from here, I'm just going to start rolling it up the board. Okay, rook goes on the file. Let's just go for more trades. And you guys are probably wondering, why did I put the bishop on d5 and he has two pieces covering the d5 square? The reason why I do this is I know that he's not able to take my knight. So he played h3 first. He saw that. That's not bad, bro. So let's just attack the rook. Usually whenever I attack someone's rook, they just counter-attack the knight. This is kind of like a pattern. It sets up a little fork on e2. So the rook goes on my 7th, attacking my pawn. I'll just take, protect the pawn, and from here it's just a matter of just rolling the pawns up the board. He hits the knight. To save my knight, I'm going to check the king. Then I'm going to start rolling the pawns. If the king decides to attack the knight, then I'd pull the knight back. But since he didn't, let's just start rolling the pawns up the board. Very simple plan here, guys. Like once I don't lose any material, like all I'm going to do is just roll the pawns up the board. So we push. He's trying to get his rook behind the passed pawn. If I move this rook, I lose this pawn. So first I'll play a5. Then I'll get the chance to move my rook. And then I'm just going to do this the whole time. Like move the rook, protect the square, push the pawn. Move the rook, protect the square, push the pawn until my pawn becomes a queen. Okay, that didn't do anything. Let's continue with the plan. Keep rolling. We keep rolling. Okay, we move the rook, push the pawn. And okay, he's just trying to go for some trades here. Let's just take these free pawns that he's giving me, and then we just continue with the plan. Now, once my pawn gets to b2, instead of pushing this, moving the rook, and then queening, I'm just gonna go knight c3, queen the pawn, win the rook, win the game. So for example, we push the pawn. We're not necessarily threatening to queen since the rook is behind, but since he just left it and attacked the knight, not only am I queening, I'm also guarding my knight. The opponent resigns. More Benoni defense against 600 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 600. We are playing some more Benoni defense. You guys have been requesting this one a lot. Then after they play c4, we play c5. This is where you can expect anything from them. Usually it's knight f3, e3, or d5. I was not expecting d5 at the 600 level, but now we play e6. And this is actually going to be the Benoni defense. Like this is the Benoni defense that Benoni defense players really like. Usually I don't see bishop g5. It shouldn't make a huge difference though. Let's just take on d5, open up the e file, and eventually... Yeah, I don't know how or why 600 or not 600, just lower rated players. Guys, stop doing this thing where you just pin someone's knight with your bishop and then just take the knight. Like, that's never good. I don't know no opening where that is good. Like, that's your own strategy. And I'm assuming you're using that strategy because of your trauma that you have getting forked with knights. It doesn't mean knights are better than bishops, bro. It just means that you need to learn how to see knights better. Like bishops are always going to be better than knights. Now he saw that I was attacking his pawn on b2, couldn't even take back on d5. So now we take on c4, and I'm ahead by 2 pawns. Okay, he developed his knight. I'm expecting a knight to come here anytime now, and it's going to be attacking my queen and threatening a fork. So one could say my queen is a bit compromised on f6. So let's just focus on our development. Like the moment the knight comes to d5, I have to pull the queen back to d8. But I'm ahead by 2 pawns. I should be fine. So he plays e4 first. Let's just continue with the regular Benoni moves. I mean, if he does not play knight d5, I will not move my queen. You know, I'm not going to give him a free tempo. So he finally take back one of his pawns. I wasn't trying to hold on to that pawn. Let's just finish our development here. f4. I think he's going to play e5 and attack my queen. To prevent that, I'm going to play d6. And yes, if you play the Benoni defense, you will have a weak pawn on d6. If you know how to use that weak pawn or know how to activate your pieces, then everything should be okay. But just be aware that that pawn is going to be weak. Okay, let's get the king out the center of the board, and then we're going to play bishop g4. Another thing that you guys need to understand is your light squared bishop is usually the bad bishop in the Benoni. And if he plays h3, yes, I'm going to take the knight. And then you guys are probably going to say, bro, you just said you should not put the bishop on g4 and take the knight. Why are you doing it? First of all, if he plays h3, he's attacking my knight. So it means, well, my bishop. So I kind of have to move the bishop anyways. Instead, he played e5, which is weird because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces on the square. He only has 1, 2, 3. So taking on e5, that's just a pawn. Okay, knight e4. He's trying to be a bit fancy. But that's not going to work. Because now I have 2 attackers on f4. We just need to take on f4. Like, if he trades queens, that's good for us since we're ahead in material. My bishop is also on the same line as this pawn on b2. And the moment he trades queens, that pawn could be unprotected. And he could also be losing a knight in the future if he takes. Because then the knight and the king is going to be on the same line. Like, you guys probably hear me say this same line so much. Like, you need to be good at spotting pieces on the same line. You also need to be good at using your X-ray vision. You know, like, for example, this rook is actually attacking the pawn through the X-ray of the knight. Like, those little things helps you to see way much better in chess. Tactics alert, please. You see how simple it is? Same line, right? Same line. The bishop and the knight is on the same line. We play bishop to b4. We check the king, force the king to move. We win the knight. That's kind of incorrect because if I go bishop to d4, now the knight is going to take, which is why we eliminate the knight first. Now we're doing a removing the guard tactic. And then after he takes with the pawn or the rook, it doesn't matter how he takes. We check him here. We pick up the knight. We win the game. We're already ahead by 2 points, by the way. So now we're going to be ahead by 5 whole points. King moves, we grab the knight, very good. Okay, he took the pawn. Now we need to bring all our pieces in the game. Since he's applying so much pressure to f7, if I move my rook, it's a drawback mistake. So let's focus on this rook first. Rook and the bishop is on the same line. So rook to d4 is always an idea, you know, just to trade more pieces off the board. The game is always super easy once we trade. So he got the king in the game. Without thinking, let's go rook to d4, just trying to get more pieces off the board. All right, so he's trading. Let's hit the king. Okay, how am I going to win this game now? Like, I'm ahead in material, but still a lot of work to put in. Let's put the rook on the same line as the king. And now my goal is to set up some discovered attack. Like, if you put your rooks or your queens or your bishop on the same line as a king, a queen, a rook, or something valuable, then you should start looking out for discovered attacks where you move that piece out the way and you're also able to put that piece literally anywhere. Okay, I don't know why he's giving me the bishop. I guess he's just giving up at this point. And then he played rook to f4. And as I told you guys, the discovered attack, we pull the knight back to e3. The knight attacks the rook. Our rook attacks the king. Once he moves the king, we grab the rook. And then it becomes a no-brainer. It's going to be super easy to win. He resigns. More Benoni defense against 700 rated players. Stick around. Opponent is now 700. We're playing some more Benoni. Okay, so d4, c4, we play c5. The low-rated players are probably going to play e3 to protect the pawn. But or knight f3. Knight f3 is usually a good move. Whenever they play like this, I like to play e6 so that way if the pawn takes the pawn, I just take back and it's helping me to develop my bishop. But if at this point they decide to play d5 and push the pawn to gain some space, then we're back into the regular Benoni that we know. Okay, bishop to f4. Guys, there's a trick here. That's the thing. It's not really a trick. It's the best move. Like, I'm gonna take the pawn on d4 because then I'm taking a central pawn. Like, I have two pawns in the center. He has one. If he takes with the queen, he's developing his queen early. I'm able to play knight c6 and gain a tempo on his queen. But what if he takes with the knight? Like, what do you guys notice that is happening? Tactics alert. The knight and the bishop is in a pawn fork pattern. So you guys had to see that. And because the knight and the bishop is in a pawn fork pattern, that's already one tactical weakness that we know. Plus, the king is exposed. We put two of those together, we play e5 first. Has to be a brilliant move. e5 first. Force the bishop to take on e5, then we check and pick up the bishop. Tactics. So he took the pawn, but we win the bishop. Okay, so he blocks with the knight. We grab the bishop, and from here it's just a chess game. Like, we're ahead by a piece. We're gonna trade as many pieces that we can. Knight goes back to f3. That's a free pawn. So we're taking free material as well. And if he plays rook b1, that's another pawn. So only I take the free pawns. He takes the free pawn. He loses his bishop. Okay, e3. We just develop. There's not really much happening here. He develops the bishop. I develop my bishop. Pinning the knight, but because I'm ahead by 3, like, let's just trade. It makes the game so easy. All right, knight back. We just castle. Let's get the king out the center. And then I need to develop my last piece, which is this light squared bishop. So I'm thinking d6, bishop e6, or d5. All right, rook goes to e1. All right, let's play d5. I mean, I'm ahead in material. I'm trying to open the center a bit. Makes it easier for me to develop my bishop. Okay, e4. He's trying to trade. Again, I'll accept the trade because I'm the one who is ahead. So if he takes with the knight, I'm just going to take. He also took with the bishop, which is even better for me because the bishop is better than the knight. And on the next turn, I'm just going to play bishop to f5, hit the knight. It doesn't matter if he moves the knight or not. Bishops are better than knights, but I'm the one ahead in material. Just going to trade. All right, so he doesn't want to trade, but the knight and the queen is on the same line. Hit him with rook to d8. The knight is now pinned. Now it's going to be very, very tricky for him now. How is he going to protect the knight? Rook d2? That shouldn't work. Because now I'm able to hit the rook, right? But then after the rook move, I have a little idea. There's also bishop to g3. But let's just hit the rook. We're trying to remove the guard here, guys. What I notice is if he just pulls the rook back, I was thinking about checking and then taking the knight, but that doesn't make sense because we're just trading. So if he pulls the rook back, we just fork him here. There's rook b1 though, so it's tricky. All right, that's where he puts the rook. And if I go back, he puts the rook back there. How does this work? Not sure. Oh, here's it. Put the knight here. Put the knight there. Because now the rook can't go back to defend. And I'm now attacking him twice. So now he's definitely going to lose some more material. All right, so a4. Again, trading is fine. But now I'm at the point where I'm just trying to go for mate, to be honest. All right, queen moves. We take more material. If he trades the queen, it's just easier for us. I'm now ahead by 7, but by the way, that's a trade that he's not able to prevent. Okay, h3, we go here, applying some more pressure to g2. All right, king moves. Let's check. Maybe I could get the knight into the attack. That could help something to lead to mate, right? That's also a fork. All right, c5. That's a fork. Like, all right, now it's just very easy for us. Okay, he moves the king. Now we grab the rook. All right, he moves the king again. I mean, maybe just rook here. Like anything that I do here is just winning. He resigns. We play more Benoni defense against 800 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 800. We're playing some more Benoni defense. So c4, we play c5, and this is where, like, this is kind of like the moment of truth. D5 is like the complex, dynamic Benoni. E3 becomes, okay, we play D5, play positional, try to win their isolated pawn in the future. And if they play knight F3, we just play E6, so that way we protect the pawn. And eventually we're going to play D5. And in this line, we may be the one who eventually get the isolated pawn. So knight C3, we play D5. If they take, we take back with the pawn. We have the isolated pawn. But isolated pawn has pros and cons. And if I'm the one with the iso pawn, then I'm going to be using the pros, not the cons. Okay, bishop G5 is a nice move. He's just focusing on his development. That can't be bad. Like, once you see someone just developing their pieces, it can't be bad what they're doing. Let's try to do the same, developing my pieces. I'm assuming he's gonna play E3, bishop D3, and castle. If he plays like that, he's not gonna have any bad pieces whatsoever. In fact, what I missed was, no, if he had taken on F6, queen takes, loses the pawn. So he plays E3. And what I want to do is play bishop e7. But if I play bishop e7, he may get the chance to take on c5 and force me to move my bishop again. So I'm going to take on d4 first. And then after I take on d4, I play bishop e7 and then just castle. Okay, he took with the pawn, which means he could actually be the one getting the iso pawn here. Let's go bishop e7, breaking the spin, preparing to just get the king castled. And I'm not going to take on c4 until he moves his bishop, because at that point, I'm forcing him to move the same piece more than once in the opening. Okay, he plays g3, which is kind of weird, because is he going to fianchetto his bishop and then lose the pawn? Not sure. Let's just castle. Or maybe he's going to take first. Nah, he didn't. Now, if I take on c4, there's no bishop to take back. And he still has the isolated pawn. All right, so he chose to castle as king. I have two pieces attacking the pawn. He has two pieces guarding. I'm going to play h6, hit the bishop. And if the bishop decides to take on f6, which a lot of these lower rated players like to do this, I would have played bishop f6 and apply even more pressure to that pawn on d4. But since he pulls the bishop back, I need to finish my development. But let's go knight b4 first, so that way we could either go knight back to, or knight d3, or knight back to d5. I'm trying to play b6, bishop b7, but I know the moment I play b6, he's going to put this knight somewhere and attack my rook. Okay, he kicks the knight. Let's just pull the knight back to d5, hit the knight, hit the bishop. Now I'm able to play moves like b6, bishop b7, even though I would prefer to play b5 since it defends the pawn. Okay, queen supports everything. I don't want to be the one who is making the capture, so let's just go rook to b8 and still prepare b5. And I'm also getting my rook off the same line as his bishop. He's getting his rook on the file. Let's play b5 here, supporting my pawn, and then we're going to be finally completing our development. Ooh, that's a move. The guy has a plan, because now he wants to fork me on c6. That's very interesting. I think I have to be a bit careful here, guys. Okay, since he has the isolated pawn, let's just go bishop d7. Like, if he takes on d7, then I'm just going to take back. Bishop takes h6, though. I need to be very careful about that. Yo, he sacked the bishop. Okay, takes, queen takes. Usually it's best to move the rook out the way and then pull the bishop back to f8. That's usually one of the best ways to defend against these sacrifices. So move the rook out the way and then pull the bishop back to f8 and then fianchetto the bishop. And then I'm going to be very safe. A bishop coming on e4 does not immediately threaten h7 because of my knight on f6. And even if he takes on d5, I'm not going to take with the knight. I need the knight on f6. So I'm just going to take with the pawn. Now the bishop joins the attack. But I saw that. I was prepared for that. Because now I'm able to hit the queen first. And if he checks my king, I block with the bishop. And this is why having a fianchettoed bishop in front of your king is so strong. Because if you have a fianchettoed bishop in front of your king and the opponent is not able to trade off that fianchettoed bishop, then no attack that they try to go for is going to work. So once I'm able to block the check or just put my bishop on g7, then my plan from there is to start trading pieces off the board. So he did go for the check. Now we block. There's no way to apply pressure. Like, there's two series of trades that I could go for. In fact, there's three. Because if I take here, then I'm also X-raying his queen. So he's going to be forced to trade the queens as well. And because I'm ahead by a piece, you guys know the drill. We trade everything. He resigned. More Benoni defense against 900 rated players. Stick around. Your opponent is now 900. Let's play some more Benoni defense. Before we play c5, let's see what this guy's gonna come with. Okay, he's playing the E3 line, guys. This is usually the positional line where we take on D4, and then once they take back, we play D5. And the whole idea is eventually we're going to take on C4. They're going to be left with this isolated pawn, and we're going to be attacking it. Now, if they take on D5 like very, very quickly, then just take with the knight and you should be fine. We don't want to take with the queen because knight c3 gains a tempo. Now, if he plays knight c3 now, we're just fine. It's okay to just develop normally because if he takes our knight and we take with the queen, he's no longer able to attack our queen anymore. So, everything is going to be okay. Now, bishop to b5 is usually a nice idea because if they take on c6, it weakens our pawn structure. But I don't really care too much because he, he would be doing that, but he would be giving up his bishop here. I'm going to play e6 here though and just try to develop my dark squared bishop and castle. Then he plays a3, preventing bishop b4. And yes, guys, we're aware that we're blocking out this bishop, but the bishop is usually fine on either b7 or a6. Here I'm just going to continue focusing on my development. I'm really trying to ensure that I castle as well. Let's get the king out the center of the board. And then he decided to take on c6. So here's what I'm noticing. He has an isolated pawn. I have an isolated pawn. However, I also have the bishop here. And in order to activate my bishop, I like to play moves like bishop a6. Remember when I told you guys that the bishop can always be activated on this diagonal? That's what I meant. And now my goal is just to bring as many pieces in the game. So for example, rooks needs files. Let's put the rook on the file. And another thing that I talk about a lot is since all my minor pieces have been successfully developed, then it's now time to start getting my major pieces in the game. So now he plays rook to b1, and just like that, he blundered. You see, guys, it's kind of crazy. Why is this a blunder? You may ask. He puts his rook on the same line as my rook, and the knight is the main defender of the rook. The moment I take the knight, the rook becomes unprotected. If he takes with the pawn, he loses the rook. If he doesn't take my knight, he still loses the rook. So these are baby tactics, guys. We talk about this a lot. There's only three things. There's not only three. There's actually 12. But if you only know three, it's good enough. If you know all 12, then you should be on your way. But this guy's already losing. So he decided to move the queen, but the thing is, he's still going to lose the rook. So he basically just lost an entire rook. And just like that time, I had by 5 whole points. So all of those little things that I was talking about, it's not even important anymore. For example, let's target his isolated pawn. I don't really care. I can always even play c5 and help him to get rid of his iso pawn. Because all I'm trying to do now is just trade some pieces off the board. Like if everything is traded off, I'm going to have an extra rook. Okay, so bishop is developed. Now I'm going to go queen b6, defending the pawn, apply pressure to d4. I'm also applying pressure to his pawn on b2, and then eventually my f rook joins the game. So everything is just revolving around what do we do in the opening? We develop, we bring pieces in the game. It's that simple. While you're doing this, you're looking out for the tactics. So now he plays b4. It's a pawn. I think he's trying to trick me though, because the bishop is on the same line as the queen. So I'm expecting d5, which he didn't play. So let's just keep grabbing material. Not expecting him to trade queens, because if he trade queens, then it's just really over. So the queen moves out the way. This is the only piece that is not doing anything. Rooks needs files. Let's put the rook on the file. Also extraing his queen, so that's not bad. H3 was played. Now we're going to be applying some pressure to his pawn on d4. So now we have 1, 2, 3 attackers. He has 1, 2, 3 defenders. So for now, his pawn is safe, which means I'm not going to be looking for some moves to try to remove the guard of that pawn. So him playing queen a1 is basically helping me because my plan was to play bishop to b7 and attack the knight. And if I'm able to get rid of that knight, his pawn on d4 becomes way weaker. Okay, rook joins the file. Not a bad move. It's attacking my queen, forcing me to react. Let's just pull the queen back. I'm just trying to eliminate the knight though. Like it wins the pawn, but it's not just because it wins the pawn. It helps me to trade pieces, especially since he puts his rook on the same line as my rook here. Then once I take on f3, I could also be trading the rooks off the board. And remember, the more piece we trade, the easier the game becomes. So he grab a free pawn. Now we take the knight. My queen and the rook guards the rook, so I'm chilling here. But look at this. He's now forced to do an in-between move because if he takes my bishop, he would have lost his rook. And that's why I'm actually going to take with the queen. Knowing that if he moves away the queen, I save my bishop, he has to first trade the queens in order to win the bishop. And notice what's happening? I have the extra rook, and now it's in a position that is impossible to lose. So now he takes, we simply take back. And from here, I'm just going to go back take the pawn, win the game. All right, so he moves the king. Let's just grab the pawn. If he trades, then I mean, here we don't really have to use our brain. For example, if the bishop is on a dark square, we just keep our pieces on light squares, and the bishop can't do anything. All right, bishop moves. Let's hit the bishop. Maybe swing the rook over to g6. Very slow progress. He resigns. More Benoni defense against 1,000 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1,000. We're playing some more Benoni defense. So after d4, c4, knight f6, we play c5. This is us initiating the Benoni defense. And as I've been explaining, they could play e3 here, they could play d5 here, they could play knight f3, all depending on how they play. We could choose to play a strategic battle or a very dynamic battle. So whenever they play this move d5, white is trying to get a space advantage. So now I like to play the move e6, and this initiates the modern Benoni, where things could get very aggressive on both sides. All right, so knight c3 here, we simply need to take on d5. They usually take with the pawn, and then we play d6. Now, this is usually the Benoni defense structure that we eventually get. Bishop g5, I haven't really seen a lot, but I think it's the same plan. We're always going to be fianchettoing our dark squared bishop, putting it on a very nice diagonal, getting the king out the center of the board, and try to attack on the queen side and in the center of the board. So bishop e2, let's just get the king castle. And one important thing that you guys need to keep in mind, in the Benoni defense, like the Pirc defense, we usually want to get rid of this light squared bishop. Like, so whenever they play bishop or knight f3, we go bishop g4, and it's the same thing apply. This is not just an opening thing. Like, don't just take a knight if the pawn does not attack the bishop, unless it's some tactical stuff. One of my students told me that whenever they see this battery pointing towards the bishop, they get scared and take on f3, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So just wait until they play a3, then you take the knight. So let's just continue to develop here. All of our minor pieces are developed, guys. Now it's time to get our major pieces in the game. And a very thematic plan for black is a6 followed by b5. And black usually never, white usually never allows this. So for example, now the knight moves out the way, that's when we take the bishop. And as I said before, white never allows black to play a6 followed by b5. The moment black plays a6, white players usually just always play the prophylactic a4, which prevents us from playing b5. It's fine though, like we're still going to get our major pieces in the way. My opponent did not play a4, but playing queen to e3, I know what his idea is. Now, that could be a mistake if he's not careful, because I think he wants to play bishop to h6, but that doesn't work due to the unprotected knight. That's one on the same line as my queen, and knight g4 simply wins material. Now, whenever you see the opponent about to make mistakes, let them do what they're doing. So I'm just going to continue with my plan of playing b5, trying to gain some space on the queen side. And if the guy wants to blunder his bishop, that's on him. Okay, he plays a3. He plays a3. And same idea here. We're still trying to get the major pieces in the game. Rook to e8. We're always going to play rook to e8. I mean, it's the open file for the rook. And usually there's some very nice tactical ideas on this e4 pawn. All right, now we're seeing queen to g3. What's the purpose of queen to g3? The queen is attacking our pawn on d6. The pawn on d6 is usually our weakest pawn, by the way, guys. As long as you're not able to lose this pawn, then you should be good. And a simple queen c7 should be good enough. I mean, I'm also getting out of the pin. I'm protecting the pawn. Worst case scenario, I'm able to just lodge this knight on e5. And a very cool Benoni plan that we could follow is to go knight e5, pawn c4, and then we're going to have this very strong knight on the d3 square. Okay, but now he's applying more pressure to d6. All right, we have to be careful here, guys, and think about what is really happening. The first thing I notice is d6 is under attack. There's a few different ways in which we can defend it. Usually a worst case scenario move is to go bishop f8, but there's knight e5. I'm also thinking about knight h5. Now, if I do play knight h5, hit the queen, he takes attack my queen, I take his queen, he takes my queen, and in the end, I take his rook, and I'm going to be ahead in material. So that move I really like, because knight h5 also forks the queen and the bishop, which means if he just chooses to move the queen out the way and I take the bishop, like that's really good for us. Like anytime you have a fianchetto bishop and it just cannot be challenged, then you're just in a very good position. So he chose to just move the queen out of the way. We grab the bishop. I'm expecting the queen to take back. And I mean, we're not ahead by any material. So let's just continue to improve our pieces. I mean, the knight and the queen is in a pawn fork pattern, but it's not really easy to play g5. So I'm going to go knight e5, improving my knight. Again, there's still knight d3 followed by c4, which is a nice idea because my knight is just going to be very, very strong. I'm also thinking about b4, though, to attack this knight on c3. Queen just decides to step back, and I think there's some ideas that I have. For example, knight c4 hit the queen, queen moves, grab takes, and then try to apply pressure. Won't work though. That won't work. Still like the idea of playing c4 because that's a nice score for the knight. Also, if I could magically get my bishop to d4, that would be nice. And I'm assuming he wants to play f4, so I'm probably gonna trick him. If I go queen here, I'm assuming he's gonna just pull the knight back though. How does this work? Let's just go rook to b8 here, guys. I want to maybe play a5 followed by b4. And if I had played a5 before, I would have lost this pawn. Knight goes back to e2. All right. You don't want to allow this. However, I think he just blundered. Very, very nice idea. And it's something that we already spoke about with this diagonal where we play knight c4, hit the queen, hit the pawn. And that's just a fork, to be honest. I mean, it's just a pawn, but I mean, it's all I need to win this game because once the queen moves, I'll grab the pawn. This pawn is going to be hanging. So technically, it's two pawns that this guy just blundered. The queen goes all the way to g3, applying some pressure here, but it's guarded. And I'm going to choose to take with the bishop, as we mentioned, because based on where he puts the rook, taking on a3 may be another free pawn. Need to be a bit careful, though, because I'm not trying to get my bishop trapped. But a pawn is a pawn at the end of the day, though, so let's just grab that pawn. Will I be able to get my bishop back to g7? I'm not sure. However, I have 3 passed pawns ready to start rolling up the board. His rooks are also in knight fork pattern, so let's see if he defends against that. And the pawn on e4 is unprotected. All right, so knight f4, he's coming in with a lot of attack. And knight d2 actually does not work here, guys, because then my bishop is just going to be left hanging. Slightly scary. I need to get my bishop back in the defense. I mean, there's bishop e5, bishop g7, knight h5, knight f5. None of those moves do anything, to be honest. So it's not like he has any good forward move. For example, that doesn't really do much. And the thing about this is, okay, I'm not able to take due to the pin, right? And I'm trying to fork here, but if I fork, I lose my bishop. What if I pull the bishop back to e5 and attack the queen? I mean, there's f4, but then I'm able to check the king, then fork. And based on where he puts the queen, I'm either able to fork him on d2 or take this free knight. So he played f4. We can't take here. We don't want to fork as yet since the bishop is under attack. So we check him on d4 first. It's kind of like an in-between move. Kind of. King move, now we go for the fork. E4 is also hanging. I mean, he's going to be coming in with some attack, to be honest, like f5. And I may not take the rook if I think it's too dangerous. I may just take on e4, hit the queen. But let's not be scared. Okay, he plays e5. All right, the rooks are still forked, so we're not necessarily in a rush to take that. So what if I take here, he takes back, and then I play bishop takes since it attacks the queen, and then after the queen move, I grab one of the rooks. Let's do that. So grab the pawn. I'm also helping him to open the file for the rook, so that I need to pay attention to. Oh, that was nice. You saw what he just did? My bishop was actually covering f6. So once he plays e5, I no longer guard f6. I didn't see that, bro. That's crazy. All right, the thing about this is I think I'm still doing fine. Let's just move the king out the way. If he's able to get his queen on h6, then I lose the game. But I'm just ahead by so many points. His rooks are still forked. Like, if he takes my rook, I'm just going to take back, knowing that his rooks are still forked. Okay, let's take back. Now we're only ahead by a point, but we're about to win 2 points. Okay, f5 was now played. And I'm actually going to take this rook. And the reason why I'm going to choose to take this rook is so that way, you know, his rooks aren't really doing anything over there if he has to move away. Now I just need to think about how am I going to convert this because it's very important that I do not get checkmate. If he plays f6, then I'll know that all he has to do is try to get a queen here. If he takes here and I take back, then I'm not afraid of any sacrifices because the queen by itself is not going to checkmate me. So using that information, I'm going to start rolling the pass pawn up the board. Okay, he took, we take back. Nothing alarming. Takes, takes, queen takes. will be attacking my rook. Hit the queen, check, block, check. Okay, maybe I don't know how strong that sacrifice was. I think he wants to check me here. But once I play e4 and attack the queen, there's no check on f6 because the bishop covers the diagonal. And now he's just sacrificing everything. But the queen by itself will not checkmate my king. Let's go king g7 here. Rook to h8 is also an idea because once I hit the queen and the queen move, that's going to be a mate. So best he could try is rook f1, but I'm not even seeing what that does. Once I play my move, which is rook h8, rook f7 is not going to help because the bishop also guards the rook. Like, the guy can't even move the queen. Putting the queen here doesn't make much sense because it's a free queen. So this is really now just game. Okay, he decides to sack the queen. And to win this, all I'm going to do is start rolling my pass pawn up the board. Very, very simple win after this. Okay, rook goes back. Pass pawns must be pushed. I mean, let's just keep rolling the pawns. Yeah, this is winning in all variations. Like, if he moves the rook away, then I need to get my queen to f3. And that's going to be mate. He resigns. More Benoni defense against 1100 rated players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1100. Let's play some more aggressive Benoni defense. So c4, we play c5. Knight f3. So whenever they play knight f3, I just like to play e6 to protect the pawn on c5. Because if they play d5, it can always transpose back into the aggressive Benoni. And if they take, it's helping us to take on c5. And if they just develop normally, I just play d5. You know, it's fine. But this is one of those positions where I'm at risk of giving myself an isolated pawn. But it should be okay. So he plays e6. Let's just develop my knight to c6. Very, very symmetrical position, guys, as you could see. And then he took on d4, which means I'm going to be the one with the isolated pawn. It's fine, though. I'm just going to take back on d4. Because usually with the isolated pawn, if my knight on f6 just guards the pawn and he's not able to like play moves like bishop g5 to harass the knight, then I'm actually just doing fine. Okay, bishop to d3 was played. And from here, I need to finish my development. Let's go bishop g4, pinning his knight to the queen, which is one of the main defenders of d4. And then right after he castles, is this not a free pawn? Because the knight is not a real defender. So once I take on d4, if he takes on d4, that's a pawn, bro. It has to be a pawn. And what he could try to do is check me on e1, but I can always block with the knight. Or he could check me on a4, but I can always block with the knight. He just decides to play bishop back to e2 though. So I'm going to use the knight to capture the bishop. And now we not only are we ahead by a pawn, but we also have the bishop here. What did we lose? Where king is still in the center of the board. So if he plays something like rook to e1, it will be a bit difficult for us to castle. All right, so rook e1 was played. How am I going to get castled? If I castle, I lose the bishop. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give up my bishop for the knight to distract his queen. He doesn't have to take with the queen, by the way, but if he chooses to take with the pawn, he's exposing his king. So if he wants to keep my king in the center, he has to expose his king. He didn't though, so now I get the chance to castle. Still, we have an isolated pawn, guys, so still going to be a tricky position. And notice how now his bishop is able to harass my knight, which is the main defender of the pawn. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Let's just move the pawn forward. Too much is happening on the d5 square. And also, the moment I move the pawn forward, b7 is also hanging. What if he takes on b7, bro? Because if I take the knight, he takes my bishop. At the end, I'm going to be able to take on b2, so it's not too bad. Okay. Okay, I can't touch that knight. If I touch the knight, I lose my queen. Good move. Okay, let's kick the bishop. I'm trying to get rid of that bishop. And the funny thing is, if I try to move my queen away too far, I'm also blundering this. But he gave up the bishop for the knight, which is fine. He still doesn't have to move the knight, by the way. That, I don't mind. It's not the best though, guys. Like this position is probably going to be a super weird, boring, drawn symmetrical. Because to activate my rook, I'm trying to grab this pawn. But by moving my rook to b8, I'm leaving this unprotected. I'm probably going to sacrifice my queen just to complicate the game. And with that imbalance, that is called an imbalance position, by the way, where maybe I have the rook and the knight, but then he has the queen. And it's not like it's completely losing, especially if this becomes a pass pawn, then I'm definitely going to be able to win the game. But okay, maybe he's just going to use the time to move the knight to e4 now. But if he tries to be fancy for one more moves, he didn't. He didn't. All right, knight goes back. Rook to e8 can't be too bad. I'm assuming he's gonna move the knight again, and if I have to try to win with this pass pawn, guys, it's all I have. The pass pawn is all I have. I also have the bishop because the bishop is better than the knight. So I'm expecting something like knight g3 because I'm attacking the knight, so he has to move it. Bro, I was attacking your knight. Just move the knight, bro. What? I know I have two pieces on the knight, bro. Just move the knight, bro. What's this? I'm just ahead by a piece now. And he wasn't playing too badly, you know. He wasn't playing too badly at all. But this is what keeps lower rated players at a lower ratings. They play good chess, but then there's always a point when their brain just stop working. Okay, so he's trading. That's good for us. We're now just completely winning, by the way, ahead by a piece. And now the pass pawn can also start rolling up the board. Our rook moves out the way, which means he wants to pin. If I push, he pins. That should be losing. So let's just get the king and the queen off the same line. Yeah, that can't be good, bro. That's too suspicious. Like, by moving the rook from b1 to b8, the back rank is now weak. So before I even move my queen, I'm going to check him first. Force the king to move, then check him again. And how is this not going to lead to a checkmate? I mean, I think this has to lead to mate. Even if it doesn't lead to mate, he has no checks on my king. So I can do it very, very slow. How does this work? Check, check. Let's just try h5. Let's cover some more running squares that he could try to escape to because he has no checks on my king, so we don't need to rush. I could also just roll this pawn up the board as well. But I know you guys are always finding everything, so I'm trying my best not to miss any obvious checkmates. Okay, he's applying pressure to f7, but that's not a check. What I'm seeing is if I check him here, it's mate if the queen is guarded because I played h5 to cover the square. So I'm going to put the rook on g8, threatening the mate because my pawn and my bishop covers the escaping squares for his king. He can't check the king. He can't do anything. Maybe f3 to slow it down by a move or something. But then I could take or even check him on f5. Good game, bro. Okay, he plays g5, but that's just a checkmate. More Benoni defense against 1200 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1200. Let's play some more Benoni defense. Okay, c4, we play c5. Oh, and by the way, guys, I mean, against a London system player, you could still play c5, but and then the same ideas of e6 and d5, you could still play like that. That's how I play it, by the way, whenever they play the London. So playing knight f6 and playing this move, this pawn to c5 move, just get used to a lot of this pawn to c5 move because it attacks the opponent's center. Okay, now we're seeing knight f3, which means we're going to play the move e6 here, giving him the option of playing e6, giving him the option of taking on c5. And otherwise, with moves like these, we just play d5. And now it's like this very symmetrical position, which is going to be hard once we get the iso pawn. But once you know how to play dynamic with the iso pawn, you should be fine. So he develops the knight, we develop the knight. We have been getting positions like these. All right, bishop goes to e2. I could take on c4. Bishop takes take on d4. Then he gets the iso pawn. Let's try that. Like once I take on c4 though, I mean, he's able to just take on c5 first and then said, hey, it's going to be symmetrical. Or he could allow himself to get the iso pawn. So knight takes followed by queen takes is also possible. And then we just go into this weird endgame. And if I'm not able to ensure that he keeps the iso pawn, then it's going to be harder for me to get the advantage. But as black, these positions are always equal. And just know that that's all you need as black, you know, equality. So knight takes d4, we have to give the guy the isolated pawn. Queen takes, we just take back. Pawn takes, I almost blundered my bishop with bishop to b4. And I do not want him to play pawn to d5. You see, this is another thing, guys. I did all of that to isolate his pawn, and then he's just going to get rid of it. Okay, queen takes is fine, because now he's not able to play d5 once I pin the knight, because I don't want him to play d5. Remember, somebody have an isolated pawn, bring them to the end game, trade the minor pieces off the board. It makes it easier for them, or it makes it harder for them to defend the pawn. So I'm not going to take, I'm going to pull back, maintain the pressure. And if he push, we hit the pawn. I mean, I don't know, because that would have got rid of his iso pawn. But let's just castle, or do I? It's very tricky, guys. Maybe I should have took actually. I think that's what I needed to do. Let's just develop the bishop. I actually needed to take and then start focusing on his backward pawn. And this is something that I don't do, guys. Like whenever someone have an ISO pawn, like sometimes you have to remember that if you take, they still have weak pawns. In this position, though, I think we have a little tactic alert. Because the bishop is unprotected, ensure that you look for unprotected pieces. And once we take the knight now, pawn is also unprotected. So both unprotected bishop and unprotected pawns are on the same line. So once he moves the bishop, which he needs to protect the valuable piece, then we take the pawn. And you know what the funny thing is? Once we take the pawn, this is now isolated again. So now it's going to be even harder for him. He has the bishop here though. So let's see if he can get something out of that. All right. So guy decided to give up the bishop here. I mean, I guess it gets to double up my pawns, but an endgame like this should not be too hard for you guys to convert. Like you still have to play some good chess. It's only a pawn at the end of the day, but this is what separates good chess players from strong chess players. You know, if you're a good chess player, you win a piece. You're not gonna lose the game if you win a piece. But can you win a like? Are you sure you're gonna win the game once you get that extra pawn? Because if you give me a pawn, you know it's over. If you give me a pawn, it's over. So now he guarded the bishop. We still don't want him to push. Now I go bishop c6, improving my bishop. That's how strong you need to be at chess. Like winning from losing positions, drawing from losing positions. Like spot a slight weakness in the opponent's position, you win because of that. Because now you know what the plan is. I want to go rook to g8 and put my rook on the file. He's just going to play g3 though, and I don't really have much. I also want to play f5 because the bishop is applying pressure here. We're definitely not going to castle in these types of position, guys. Let's play king e7. Remember how important it is to centralize the king. Rook to d8 is an idea. We're not going to lose this pawn. He's just... Okay, let's just play rook to g8 so that way I force him to just fiddle around with the pawns. Then once I play f5, I'll put the rook on d8. Because the rook isn't really doing much here anymore once he plays something like f3. But if he plays g3, at least we could say, okay, king is a bit weaker. But we still have to play f5. So now we play f5 in order to guard our pawn. And now we're going to start applying a bunch of pressure to d4. I think I missed that tactic, guys. A better way to defend against the bishop was to just sack the rook. Because once the rook takes, I put both rooks on the same line. And then after he defends, I still would have had time to bring more pieces in the game. So it was actually very bad that I missed that tactic. If any one of you guys spot that, you know, then and you have some potential. He's going to set himself up for failure. Watch this. You see, notice the king and the rook is on the same line here? I'm attacking this pawn. So maybe he's going to be like, yo, let the rook guard the pawn and then move the bishop somewhere out the way. Bishop doesn't really have good squares to move to anyways. But if he pulls the bishop back to like here, it doesn't even work though. I mean, it kind of does. We check him here. The king has to move. He's going to go here. Now, if I take his rook, he takes my rook. But because I know that his rook is dead, I'm going to take here with check. So now we win another pawn. And then after the rook takes, we take the rook. And his bishop and his rook is also going to be pinned. So my next move is to just apply pressure to the pinned bishop, especially since I'm ahead by 2 pawns. Like, we're going to trade everything off the board. And then the king and pawn endgame is just obviously winning. Like, we know this. Like, once you trade every single piece off the board, you only need 1 pawn to win like 85 to 90% of your games. All right, so he's at least he's keeping the bishop. Let's trade here. He's trying to keep something. And now I'm going to start rolling my pawn majority up the board. So it's 2 pawns versus 1 pawn. We start rolling them up the board. Bishop is also kind of trapped, especially if I play a4, then the bishop just really has no squares to move to. Wondering if it's worth it though. I don't think I have to do all of that. Let me just try to centralize the king. And if he push, then I can start rolling my pass pawn. Okay. Let's keep activating the king. Now I'm going to be able to push b4, check the king. And like every move that I'm trying to do here now, guys, is just to roll this pawn up the board. So if he puts the king here, I'm going to want to force his king out the way so that way I'm able to push the pawn. Or at least protect the square and push the pawn. And because I'm ahead by 2 pawns, I don't mind sacking this pawn just to trade the bishops and then use the fox in the chicken coop technique. It's actually what I'm thinking about. Okay, bishop moves. Let's get the king as close as possible first. Remember, we don't need to be rushing the endgame. Doesn't do much. Now we push. If the bishop takes, I'm not expecting him to trade, by the way. But if he does trade, it just makes it easy for my king to get to his pawns. Okay, now we can just win this game without thinking. We're just going to take all the pawns, promote the pawn. Like, you guys don't need to understand how I'm going to do that. And now I just turn the pawn into a queen and win. Let's just start rolling. He resigns. More Benoni defense against 1300 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1300. We're beating some more Benoni opening. So c4 we play c5, d5 we play e6. If they take, we can always still play e6. But this is the Benoni that we like. You know, this is the aggressive one. This is the complex one. By the way, guys, things could get very complex. Knight takes they don't usually play though. Yeah, knight takes they don't usually play. I'm just gonna should I take? Because that kind of help him, right? But I don't want him to play bishop g5. That's gonna be annoying. So let's just take. If he takes with the pawn, then I'll just play it normally and like, okay, fine, we traded the knights. If he takes with the queen, I'm gonna go knight c6 and then try to gain a tempo on his queen. Yeah, so for example here, the idea is to go bishop e6, but we don't want to blunder b7. So let's go knight c6. And then my plan here is very, very simple. Play d6, play bishop e6. My pawn on d6 is going to be a backward pawn, by the way, guys, which is why I say this is very complex because purposely allow yourself to have the backward pawn, and while white is trying to attack it, you just try to start playing for a lot of counter attacks. Okay, he's being very aggressive. Now, I have to play a defensive move here because my queen is under attack. There's two options. Queen b6, hit the pawn, offense is the best defense, or block with the bishop. What you guys need to understand that minor pieces are the best defenders of weaknesses. So if I block with the bishop after the trade, my pawn on d6 becomes way, way weaker. So I'm just going to go bishop to d6. Maybe I'm not going to fianchetto. Maybe I'm going to chase this bishop away, then put my bishop on e7 and castle. But maybe he's going to castle here. I'm going to gain the tempo on the queen, then gain the tempo on the bishop. If he pulls back, I may gain another one and go bishop g7, especially if he castle. Now that he plays b3, I'm definitely thinking about it. So let's develop first, hit the queen. We're just trying to finish development here, guys. Once we move this bishop and castle the king, we're in the middle game. And he's still going to be in the opening. He needs to castle and develop his bishop. All right, queen goes back. That's another tempo, by the way, but let's just wait until we need it. Let's go h6, hit the bishop. If bishop back, okay, it's tricky. He's hitting this. But if I push, the moment he takes, he puts the bishop on the same line as the queen. Doesn't work though. Because if I go here, the queen moves and hits my unprotected rook. But then if I take the rook and he takes my queen, I check him here and that's mate though. Okay, this is why you guys need to calculate deeper, you know? Sometimes you only calculate 2 moves ahead. And if you can't calculate deeply, then your visualization skills, you need to work on your visualization. If you haven't gotten my book, get the book. That's how I'm able to solve tactics quickly. You know, that's how I'm able to see all of the tactical weaknesses. If you want to get the book, you know, send book to ChesswithAkeem@gmail.com and I'll send it over to you. Bishop goes back. He did not bite the bait. It's tricky though, because if I go here, this is dead. I don't want to lose. You see, I tell you guys about this weak pawn. Okay, fine. I'm actually going to castle. I'm going to castle so that way the rook guards the pawn. I'm also putting the rook on the same line as the queen. So pawn to d5 becomes possible. I want to go bishop g7 though. You see, he's just ganging up on the pawn. But whenever you have a weakness, guys, getting rid of that weakness is usually very good. Because it's like the main weakness in the Benoni is the backward pawn. So if you can get rid of the backward pawn, then you just have a really nice position. Okay, queen moves out the way. I can... Okay, he's clearly attacking this. The queen is also compromised because if I just move the bishop g7 hits the queen, I can push and gain a tempo as well. But I want to open the game. I definitely want to open the game because his king is still in the center. So let's try to open up the position. His king and his queen is also on the same line here. So if I'm able to get this bishop here, that's going to pin the queen. Which means if he takes, I can also consider moves like pawn push. All right, knight comes in. I guess I'm just going to pin the knight because then the knight just can't move after that. If he moves the knight, he loses the queen. Attack. Takes. Alert. Queen, main defender of the knight. Bishop is the main defender of the knight. So we're attacking twice, right? He's guarding twice. So we just need to hit him with our removing the guard tactic. Pawn d4. We're also cutting off the queen from guarding the knight. Very, very nice idea. And maybe some of you guys are wondering, how do I see the tactic as soon as the opponent plays the move? Like, a lot of the times, I'm able to like see it before it happens. And that's the level that I want you guys to be able to get to. But if he takes and I play pawn takes, I hit the queen. I have 2 pieces attacking the knight. Queen has to go somewhere. And then we just grab the knight. Okay, so he took. I take the queen cannot guard the knight. That's the point. I didn't look on c4, by the way. But if c4, I take the queen, he takes my queen, then I take the knight. Hopefully. Because if he takes this, he's threatening to queen. So hopefully that works. But especially since he's in a position like this, he has to look for some crazy moves. I call them invisible moves. It's like moves that you wouldn't think about. But now we have two pieces attacking. He has one piece guarding. We just take the free piece and continue to. Guys, do I have any piece that is not doing anything? There's going to be a bunch of tactics just start happening now because all my pieces are so active. All right, let's start by checking the king. I'm ahead by 3 though, so if he wants to trade the queen, it's something that I could consider. He blocked with the rook. I'm actually happy that he blocked with the rook. But if he wanted to trade queens, I definitely consider it. Let's continue with the attack though. Let's hit the queen. We don't want him to castle. We don't want him to develop the bishop. We don't want him to get this rook in the game. Queen moves. I'm trying to apply more pressure to this pinned rook. So just pull the knight back. That's fine. Because now the threat is bishop c3. And there's a lot of cases where I can also put the knight on b4 to c2. Okay, he missed it, took with the bishop. Now we pin the rook. And are we winning the rook? I think we are. Because the rook is not guarding the bishop, guys. Okay, maybe he's able to put the... we're winning the bishop. It's just so many tactics. Like, if he tried to use the queen to guard the rook, because the rook no longer guards the bishop, well, or because pinned pieces don't protect, we just take the bishop, because the rook is just pinned. So he just castled, gave me the rook, and this should be easy conversion. All right, bishop comes in. I mean, that's also an annoying bishop, so I wouldn't even think twice about trying to trade it off. No, I'm just going for trades, by the way, guys. 7 points of material is a lot. Like, if he takes, I take back. My rook also gets the file on his king. Nice. Now, g2 becomes the focal point. So moves like bishop h3 becomes possible. Pawn f3 becomes possible. That looks like a pawn, though. Okay, he hits the queen, but I have 2 pieces covering the square. He's only guarding it with the queen. So that's just a pawn, especially since I'm trying to trade. And he has to be careful where he puts the queen if he does not go for this trade, because the queen is the only piece guarding the bishop. All right, queen moves. Now we start targeting the focal point. So hit him with f3, allow him to play g3, weaken the light squares, and then I just try to get a queen on g2. Okay, now we swing over the queen. Remember, pin pieces don't protect, guys, so we're fine. The pawn is pinned. I'm threatening to play queen h3. Usually how you defend against this is to either attack the pawn or move the rook so that way you're able to pull the bishop back. Okay, he saw it. Yeah, once you see him moves the rook like that, he definitely knows what he's doing. All right, so since I know that if I play queen... Okay, that doesn't work. Queen here, bishop back, I take first. Rook takes. What if I hit the queen? What if I hit the queen, though, and then get rid of the bishop? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Hit the queen, force the queen to move, not rushing this. And then once the queen moves, we eliminate the bishop, then hit him with queen h3. All right. That's definitely a move, though. That's definitely a move, though. Because now if I move my knight, I lose my queen. What if I play rook takes, just eliminate his bishop? Like, let him take, and then I hit him with queen h3. That's what I'm going to do. So eliminate the bishop. He has no checks. Still can't take here. Let him take. Because maybe he thinks I'm going to take and blunder my queen. But nah. Now we get the queen on g2. And there's nothing he can do to prevent a look. Oh. Except that move. I forgot about this move. I forgot about that move to brown dog. All right, let's just hit the rook. He can't move the rook, though. He just can't move the rook. So he has to just protect the rook. But I thought this was mate. Okay. Give me I'll take the queen. I'll just take the queen. Thought I was mating him, though. But let's try to go for the mate here. Actually, there's nothing you could do to prevent mate. He resigns. We play more Benoni defense against 1400 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1400. We are playing some more Benoni defense. C4, we play C5. All right, now we're seeing E3. We're going to take the positional route, taking on D4, playing D5, with the whole idea of giving white an isolated D pawn. He's developing, we're developing. And from here, it's just very normal development. I like to play e6 to support the center, and eventually this bishop goes to either b7 or a6, depending on the position. And I'll use this time to simply develop and castle. Now, once they take on d5, I don't want to take with the pawn because I want to ensure that he's the only one with the ISO pawn. So I'll just take with the knight in this position. And even if he takes with his knight, I'll just take with the queen because I want to ensure that I'm able to apply as much pressure as possible in the future to his isolated pawn. All right, so he's developing. We're developing. Plan is to castle. Good. He castle, I castle. I'm assuming he's going to try to get the dark squared bishop out, and then I'm going to try to get my light squared bishop out. Usually I like a6, b5. It's probably a bit too slow. Maybe I should just play immediate b6, bishop b7, and then at least I can say I will just not have any bad pieces. Now he puts the bishop on c4. I think he's trying to take my knight or get rid of his isolated pawn. That's a nice idea that he has. Okay. If he takes with the knight, then I get the tempo on the bishop. If he takes with the bishop, I get the bishop here. I think I have to just do it like that. Because even if I go knight back, bishop here, okay, maybe I have knight a5. Because the moment he plays d5, he could be getting rid of his iso pawn. Let's try knight back. Maybe I'm going to try knight back. If bishop back, I go knight a5. And then if he push, I tried to eliminate the bishop, then take the pawn. I'm just trying to ensure that he does not get rid of the iso pawn. There's a lot of ways how he's able to do it though. For example, I would love to get my bishop on this diagonal. My knight is sitting here. I'm trying to go bishop d7 to c6. The moment I put the bishop on d7, maybe that's when he's going to play d5. Okay, so he don't really care about losing the bishop here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that bishop, knowing that I have the bishop here. Plus, if he takes with the queen, the pawn would have been isolated. Now he has two isolated pawns, and one pair of them is doubled. Like, I love my position now. And remember, guys, whenever you're playing against these pawn weaknesses, trading as many minor pieces off the board is usually very, very good. Because the closer you're able to get the game in an endgame, it becomes way easier for us to play. So if he takes with the knight, I'm going to play queen takes, apply more pressure to the iso pawn, maybe even b6, bishop b7, and get a little battery on this diagonal. Thinking about b6, even though his knight could go to c6, because I shouldn't care, right? Let's say I don't really want to do it. I don't really want to do it. b6 weakens the c6 square. Knight c6, let's say I move, he takes. I take with the knight. That's kind of weird. That's kind of weird. Now, since he puts his queen on the same line as my king, I'm expecting bishop h6. If bishop h6, though, bishop to f6 defends the mate, so that's not too scary. All right, guys, I'm having some issues developing. I'm going to go with bishop to f6 first, so that way once I play b6, knight c6 isn't really getting the bishop here. Kind of wanted him to play bishop h6 because I knew that it wouldn't work. And then he would have been forced to move the bishop again, but he's fine. Okay, rook comes on the file, guarding the pawn. Now we play b6. Plan is to go bishop to b7 and finally finish my development. I mean, he hasn't completed his development either, but maybe he's not really seeing good squares where he could put his bishop. Yeah, and he went for the knight c6 move anyways. All right, so let's just go queen here. Hit the knight. The plan is to play bishop b7 on the next move. I'm also covering the e5 square twice now, which means if knight e5, I can always takes, and that's a pawn. Yeah. So we're about to lose the bishop here, but we're about to win a pawn, so that's good for us. He puts the knight on e5. We have two pieces on the square. Let's just take. And after he takes, I'll play queen takes. Now, he could take on d5 here, and I'll take with the pawn, and automatically his queen is going to be under attack. But then I'm now going to be the one with the isolated pawn. So let's take, hit the queen. Now he has to move the queen. If he's smart, I would try to trade the queens off the board because hopefully you guys are noticing that it's an opposite colored bishop ending. So now if we go in the endgame with the opposite colored bishop, it's going to be a bit harder for me to win. But because I have the extra pawn plus his pawns over here is weak, I think I could definitely grind this out to a win. Okay, he doesn't want to trade queens. Fair enough. And I think bishop f4 is nah, that's going to hang. Do I put my bishop here or here? I'm going to choose to put the bishop on e6. It guards the pawn, but eventually if I'm able to push this, his b pawn is going to be under attack. No, none of my rooks aren't really doing much. I mean, this one is doing a defensive job. Maybe I'm just going to play a5, fixing this pawn, preventing his rook from grabbing my pawn, and then just put a rook on c8 and d8. Oh, okay. I see why he plays rook a2. I see exactly why he plays rook a2. He wants to play bishop to f4 and get the tempo on my queen. Not a terrible idea. So let's play a5, which I spoke about, fixing his weak pawn on b3. And when I say fixing the pawn, it means now the weakness that he has is not able to move. He's attacking my queen. I'll simply move it out the way. He still has the option of trying to get this game in opposite colored bishops. But then if I take the queens, like he has too many double pawns. It is opposite colored bishops, but I will be able to win it. I mean, there's just too many weaknesses. All right, he moves the rook again. I was just about to say that rook was definitely offside. I think he wants to put the rook here. Let's just continue with the plan. Rooks do need files. Let's put the rook on a file. That's an unprotected pawn, so getting my rook here is also an idea. Okay, let's get the rook on the second. I mean, all his pieces are active, to be honest. I'm expecting he's going to want to try to trade one of the rooks in order to guard his pawn. At that point, I'm not going to take. I'm just going to double up on the c file. All my pieces are going to be active as well. Even though my bishop is kind of doing passive defensive role, it's still really defending my pawn. And it makes his rooks not really as active as they seem to be. Okay, he's going for it. He's going for it. We spoke about this already, though. Oh, nah. Guy just blundered his bishop. What's this? That's kind of crazy. I thought I was gonna take his queen and then take this pawn, and then I was like, what if I go back and defend it? And then I saw that the guy just gave me a free bishop. It's a piece, buddy. Now he wants to push so that way once I take, he takes the pawn. I'm just gonna play the prophylactic g6, get the rest of my pieces in the game, and then start trading. This is all I need to do now to win this game. Now I'm ahead by 4 whole points. Can't lose this. Get the rook on the second, and then every chance that I get to trade, I'll take it. All right, king up. We start trading. And since I'm in the end game, I'm going to be a bit patient. Let's try to get my king in the game. h4, we keep activating the king. F3 doesn't do much. Let's activate the king as much as we can first. Also, this is a pass pawn. So if I get the rook behind the pawn, I can also try rolling it up the board. But I'm assuming if I go here, okay, his last move didn't really make much sense. Yeah, let's just start rolling the pawn. I guess he wants to play h5, but I'm just going to keep pushing my pawn. Now, if he takes, I have to take back. I'm assuming he's going to go here. I'm going to first protect the pawn, and then eventually I'll try to get my rook to c2. Against the endgame, we have to be a bit patient when it comes to the endgame, especially if it's a position that we're already winning. We don't want to try to finish the game too quickly or get too fancy and then throw away the game. All right, another move that doesn't do anything. Now, instead of pushing or getting the rook behind the pawn, I go rook c2, because if he trades, that's game. And if he moves away the rook, then I'm able to keep rolling the pawn. Okay, this is game. This is game. Like, taking here is not going to help. Once I take and the king takes, his king is just so outside of the square. No, it's so easy for me to simply queen the pawn. So I queen, he's going to try to queen, but then I take and then I protect the queening square. And I'm actually just waiting on resignation at this point. Queen to b2 is also checkmate. King moves out the way, and that's just checkmate. More Benoni defense against 1500 level players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1500. Let's play some more Benoni defense. Okay, c4 we play c5. Let's see what we're gonna get. Will it be e3 or d5? D5 it is. We're gonna have a very fun Benoni here, guys, with pawn e6. Usually here they play knight c3, and then we take on d5, and then after they take with the pawn, we play d6. Now, the most aggressive way to play against the Benoni is to play e4 followed by f4. But let's see how this guy's going to play, because if you don't try to play at least slightly aggressive or try to target this weak d6 pawn, then it's going to be easy for me to beat him this game. Now, usually our plan is to play on the dark squares in the Benoni. I'm expecting e4 though here. E4 is usually the move. Why would he play e3? For one, he's not controlling the center. Two, he's blocking in his bishop. I think he's just trying to develop this bishop, bro. But at least put the pawn on e4. You're not trying to control the center, bro. I bet you guys eventually he's going to put the pawn on e4. And if he's going to put the pawn on e3, then e4, then why waste time? All right, usually, now that he's checking, I'm going to block with the bishop, since the light squared bishop is usually the bad bishop in the Benoni. And if he decides to trade, I'm just going to castle. Well, after developing my bishop. So maybe he's going to go knight f3 castle, and then I'm going to go bishop g7 castle. Okay, knight f3, we go bishop g7, and he's going to castle, I'm going to castle. All right, so we've both castled. Now my plan is to play b5 if possible. If I play a6, it makes it a bit too obvious, and he's gonna play a4 automatically. So maybe I should play rook to b8 and then play b5. And if I play rook b8 pawn to a4, I could still consider a6 b5, even though usually playing a5 in the Benoni also makes it harder for us to play b5. Three, guess he is trying to prevent something from going to g4. Wasn't planning on getting my knight on g4, by the way. Let's continue with the plan. I'm trying to start some attack on the queen side. Usually in the Benoni, you can attack on the queen side, the center, and then usually we can also attack the opponent's king, but we kind of want to attack them from the queen side. Knight b5 attacks both pawns at the same time. The thing is, I'm able to simply play queen b6, which not only am I defending both pawns, I'm also attacking the knight. The other thing is, I do not want my queen on b6. I kind of had to defend d6. So he plays a6. No, well, he played a4 to protect the knight. Now I play a6 to chase away the knight. And then once the knight goes back, I'm gonna try to play b5. And if I really want to play b5, I need to move my queen out the way. So let's just pull the queen back to c7 and then try to play b5. And as I was mentioning to you guys, if he plays a5 and then I play b5, he's just gonna en passant. And then in this type of structure, my a6 is gonna be weak and then his b2 is gonna be weak. Usually my rook is on b6, guarding a6 and attacking b2, but eventually he played e4. You see what I was talking about? Which means playing e3 was just wasting time. Now we play b5 and we get the space that we really wanted on the queen side. And in addition to that, keep in mind that this knight is the main defender of e4. So if I'm able to get rid of that knight, then that's just going to be a very nice removing the guard tactic, which is why he decided to defend the pawn again. Because now if I attack the knight and the knight moves, I win this. And that's why I'm going to play rook to e8, which applies even more pressure to the pawn. Okay, he saw that, used the rook to defend, and now I'm just going to try to get my knight on the d3 square. Usually that's just a very nice idea. I think he wants bishop f4 though. Let's just go b5 since it's a more attacking move, and then maybe afterwards I'll play c4. That's what we want to see. Him backpedaling his pieces. I still have two attackers here. He still has two defenders. What if I play b3? And then my plan with b3 is to try to lure his queen away from guarding e4. And then if he has to put his queen on b1, then he's basically just putting all his pieces on the back rank. All right, queen c4 is just a tactical alert, guys. Like, I don't win too much. I'm not going to win too much. But notice how, like, I talk about this a lot, guys, but understanding unprotected pieces, pieces on the same line, king safety, this is all you need, even though there's 12 of them. Because the queen and the pawn is on the same line. Play rook to b4, hit the queen, force the queen to move. Once the queen moves, we're going to have one, two, three pieces attacking e4. He's only going to have two pieces guarding e4. If you're trying to skyrocket your tactics so you don't miss any more tactics in your games, then just get my book. My book is ready. Just send an email to me at ChesswithAkeem@gmail.com. Send the word book, and I'll send it over to you. All right, so the queen goes back. Now it's just attackers versus defenders. So, okay. Tricky thing is if I take with the rook, this is unprotected. So I think it's best if I just take with the knight. My rook on e8 is going to be unprotected though, so need to keep that in mind. Okay, knight c3. You see what he's... Whoa! I thought that was a tactic, but it's not. But what I saw, guys, was his rook and his bishop is in a pawn fork pattern. So if I take with the bishop, then I could fork. Wait, take with the bishop, fork, takes, rook takes, though. That's the thing. He always just has rook takes in the end. So it doesn't really give me much. He's attacking my knight so many times. I'll just play f5 just to ensure that my knight is guarded. I could have also played knight f6. I can always play knight f6 next, though. No, it's a tactic alert. Has to be a tactic alert. No, because my knight is guarded. So take with the bishop. If he takes with the pawn, I play b2 and that's a fork. And then after the bishop takes, we just take backhand. It's just three pieces. We don't want to take with the knight, guys, because the rook is unprotected. So we have to take with the bishop. And the whole time doing this, my rook is going to be under attack. But if I attack his rook and he takes my rook, I take his rook and then I have a queen. So once I play b2 and he moves his rook and I take, he's still not able to take my rook because I still have a queen. So he's going to be forced to take the queen. And then I'm going to have enough time to move my rook out the way. So bishop takes, I take, and that's a free piece. Now he's able to play knight takes, rook takes, get back a pawn, but it's fine. Still just completely winning for us. Okay, f3 I didn't really take into consideration, but I can always pull the knight back to f6 and defend this. In the meantime, let's play c4 and counterattack the queen. And another reason why I'm playing c4, and this happens a lot in the Benoni, by the way, guys, is we can always put our queen on some b6 or c5 squares to gain some very nice attack on their king. Okay, queen moves out the way, which means if I go here, then I'm just trying to trade, which means now I just have to pull the knight back. It's fine. Pull the knight back. Yeah, let's just pull the knight back. Like, I want the trade. I'm the one who's ahead in material. Takes. Let's just say he plays rook down. I'll just pull my rook back and just trade even more pieces off the board. Now that the position seems a bit dangerous, like there's no queen g7, but I want to be as careful as possible. Remember, guys, if you're winning a game, don't complicate it. You're ahead by 3 points, look for trades. And it's very important that you know how to force the trades off the board. Queen and the king is on the same line. We're just going to go for the trade here. Queen to b6. If he takes, I take with either the knight or the rook, and then we're just winning. It's going to be an annoying knight, but it's easy to get rid of that knight. Oof, that I didn't take into consideration. But all I need to do is to check him here, get the queens off the board. It's way easier to defend if the queens are off the board. After he takes with the pawn, that's a pass pawn, by the way. And now we pull the rook all the way back, going for even more trades. And also, I need to ensure that it's guarded. It's not just blundering the rook. Rook back hits the knight. Let's play knight f6. Now we're hitting the unprotected pawn. And if I'm able to just get the rook behind the pass pawn and start rolling it up the board, then it's really GG's. But this is GG's though. Okay, rook goes back. Let's protect the pawn. Remember, guys, rooks belong behind the pass pawn. It doesn't matter if it is your pawn or the opponent pawn. A pass pawn is on the board. Get your rook behind it. Okay, since that didn't do anything, let's just roll the pawn as far as possible up the board. I mean, eventually he has to pull his rook back in order to prevent it from queening. If he plays any other random move, then once I push, he's going to be forced to lose the rook, or I'm just going to have a queen. For example, okay, that's not bad because once I push, he's only going to lose a knight. Still a lot of material though. So knight back, we queen, force the knight to take, and now we just start capturing pawns. Okay, I like this move f4, preventing the king from even trying to escape. That does not attack the knight, by the way. It's already guarded. Let's check, force the king on the back rank, and then slowly start to get my king in the game. Protect the knight so that way I can grab this pawn next. He resigns. More Benoni defense against 1600 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1600. We're going to be playing some more Benoni defense. c4, we play c5. And then whenever they play d5, we play e6. This is where the game is usually very, very fun. We take on d5, play d6, and now we're basically trying to fianchetto the dark squared bishop. He's playing very fast though, so I'm assuming he has some experience playing against the Benoni. He even played h3 to prevent my bishop from being traded off. So assuming the guy knows what he's doing. But let's see. Okay, he develops the bishop, which defends the E pawn. That makes a lot of sense. Let's apply some pressure to that pawn. No, wait, no. How does this work? My knight is pinned, so I have nothing there. Queen a5, he's just going to castle. So let's just play a6, prepare b5, prevent knight b5, and then we just maybe play queen c7, knight d7. Yeah, he also played a4. Guy knows exactly what he's doing. All right, so queen c7 makes it hard for him to play e5, get out of the pin, prepare c4, so that way I can play some knight d7 to c4, and then drop the knight on d3. So he castle. Before I play c4, I'm going to go knight d7, because I want to finish my development first. Also, once you play c4, you can also think about rook to b8 and b5. Pushing pawns on the side that the king is on, I wouldn't recommend. Now we go c4, hit the bishop. If the bishop goes back here, that's a pawn. If the bishop goes back here, knight c5, we're applying more pressure to the pawn on e4. So now we have him defending, especially if he allows us to play b5. So rook to b8, pawn b5 would be perfect. If rook to b8, it's usually best to play a4, so that way if b5, he en passant. Okay, so he guarded the pawn. We play the rook to b8. And notice how I'm not moving the bishop. Sometimes we could just put the bishop on d7. By the way, instead of rook to b8, probably I should have played bishop d7 because it still prepares b5 and it connects my rooks. So I was about to say that the bishop doesn't really have good squares. That's why I'm not really moving it as yet. And a lot of times when you play against d4, that's going to be the case. The bishop don't have a lot of good squares. Just don't move it. So now he's targeting this pawn, but I'm right on time to defend it. Now, this knight being one of the main defenders of e4, I can also hit him with b4, kick that knight, and then he could be losing his e pawn. Okay. I wasn't ready for e5. If I play b4, he could even take here because my queen is under attack. Takes. All right, this is tricky. That's a very strong way to just get rid of the weakness. And this is why whenever you're attacking a weakness, guys, you need to fix it. Because imagine I was just attacking the pawn like that and then he just moves it. All right, knight takes I wasn't expecting though. I think he should have played queen takes because now the knight is the main defender of this pawn. Hit him with b5. And if he has to move the pawn, we just grab this. All right, knight moves. This is already guarded. So grab this or nah. If we take here, the bishop hits the rook. So grab the pawn. Now we're attacking the knight 3 times. If he takes my knight, maybe I could even play rook takes first as an in-between move. And then after he saves his queen, then we grab this. And if he pulls the bishop back to e3 guarding the knight, we just eliminate the bishop. Then we grab the knight. Tactics. Oh, or he could just put the knight in the way. All right, the knight is still pinned though. So since the knight is still pinned, can't we just PP on the PP? Because if he takes, we take back the knight still. I knew he would have gone for that because he saw my bishop and the queen and the rook on the same line. But that's a level 1 blunder, Mr. 1600. That's an entire bishop. Okay, he moves the queen. If I take with the pawn, he finally takes my knight. So I guess it was all part of his plan. If I take with the rook, though, I'm guarding the knight, and I'm already ahead by 4. So that's going to give me some points. Bishop b7 hits the knight, and then if he takes my knight, I take his knight. And if he takes, I takes, but rook takes, and I'm pinned. Let's just take like this. I'm still going to be ahead by a lot of material, and it's still a bit tricky for him. Okay, now we take. This is now guarded. Now he takes. I'm ahead by 6 whole entire points. This can't be hard. Once I grab this pawn, I hit the rook. I have 2 passed pawns ready to roll up the board. If he plays bishop to d5, we can always just put the king on h8. Because once I have the bishop on the diagonal, there's nothing on my king. All right, rook moves. I think it's time to start rolling the pawns. But let's just finish my development. I'm moving the bishop for the first time on move 27, guys. I'm preventing any bishop moves. Okay. First thing I saw was this, but the queen is guarded. And that's why I'm going to put the bishop there. Put the bishop on the same line as the queen, and then we hit him with knight e2. So he has to move the queen. All right, now it's just to roll the pawns up the board, to be honest. Like, yeah, passed pawns must be pushed. Mr. 1600, bro. That's a level 1 blunder, bro. That's a level 1 blunder, bro. Good game. We play more Benoni against 1700 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1700. We're trying to play some more Benoni opening. Now, the Benoni could be very aggressive or very positional based on how they play it, but it's basically knight f6 followed by c5. If they play e3 or knight f3, then it's going to be a bit more positional. But then if they play d5, trying to get some space advantage, then it becomes aggressive. Now, whenever they play e3, I like to just take on d4 followed by playing d5. And that could basically give them an isolated pawn. And then once they get the isolated pawn, I try to just take the game into an endgame and then win like that. However, guys, even though an isolated pawn is a weakness, whenever your opponent has an isolated pawn too early, it makes it so easy for them to develop their pieces. So you have to keep that in mind. All right, what I'm going to do though is I'm just going to play a bit conservative, develop my pieces, try to do it as quickly as possible. And one thing I like to do here is to play e6 and not bring the bishop out first because queen b3 could be very annoying. So let's just go e6 here. Anytime they take, we take with the pawn. And if they move the bishop, we take on c4. So he's basically taking because he wants to move the bishop. We're going to take with the knight so that way it keeps his pawn isolated. I mean, bishop c4 here though is a nice try. I'm trying my best to ensure that his pawn stays isolated, but there are cases where we just have to ensure it's like they're forcing us to unisolate their pawn. Bishop to b5 is not a bad square at all. All right, but here's what I'm going to do. Let's go bishop to b4. I'm basically developing and applying pressure to the knight. Um, that I was not expecting. I wasn't expecting that move. It looks like he's just giving me a free pawn. But because he's so ahead in development, I think he's able to do it. Like, if I take with the bishop and then take it the queen, he's going to take on c6 first. And then after I takes, that's when he's going to move the queen. Question is, where is he going to put the queen? That's the question. Or does it mean I should take with the knight, then take with the rook? Then it becomes obvious that he's going to put the rook here. Pawn is a pawn at the end of the day, guys. This is one of those risky moves because I'm about to take a pawn and my king is going to be in the center. Takes, knight takes, hit the queen. It forks him here. So I think he has to take, which also gives up his bishop. And then after I take, he has to move the queen. Queen c2 hits the knight and the pawn. I don't think it's worth it. It's not worth it. Let's just castle. It's not worth it at all. Now, he's able to take on c6 still and give me an isolated pawn. But in that scenario, he's giving up his bishop here. So that's how I'm thinking about it. So now we're both going to have weak pawns, but at least I'm going to have the bishop here and the weak pawn. I am targeting his knight twice, so he took. I'm going to take with the queen, so that way I'm not getting any iso pawn, and now I'm attacking his unprotected bishop. So I'm expecting this move queen to a4, which he did not play. He pulls the bishop back, and that's now just a free pawn, because I have two pieces attacking. He only has one piece guarding, so once we take the pawn, that's just a pawn. Let's just grab the pawn. That was a trick. That was a trick. His queen is protecting the pawn through the x-ray. His queen is on the same line as my pawn, as my queen. So if I takes, knight takes, queen takes, bishop takes h7, and I'm actually going to lose the queen. So if you did not see that, then you need to work on your tactics. But I'm going to play the move rook to d8. What this does is I'm applying even more pressure to this isolated pawn on d4. I didn't really calculate what happens, though, if he sacrificed the bishop. I probably should have. Don't tell me that I just walked into a Greek gift. Takes, knight check, king back, queen up, f7 and h7 is under attack. That's never a good sign, which means if he takes, king takes, knight up, I have to play king g6. King g6 is usually the best way to respond if you accidentally missed that the opponent has Greek gift. But this is fine for black though. Like, yeah, he also went for it. He saw it. We take, and then after the knight goes, like, if you accidentally just forgot that the opponent has a Greek gift or you missed a Greek gift, it's usually never good to just pull the king back. It seems as if you're putting your king in the open, but if you pull the king back, queen h5, and this is why I say when the opponent has an iso pawn, they have very active position. Once I play king g6 though, usually here they play queen to g5 and then they try to get some discovered attack, but I don't think it works here, luckily, because queen here should be able to play. Actually, I'm going to play queen takes d4 because once my queen attacks his queen, no discovered attack is going to work. There's no queen h5, and if he checks me here, then I'm going to block with the queen. So he goes here. There's f5, but then he pulls the queen back. So I'm going to play queen takes. Queen takes, there's a check here though. Let's not fall for that because if I go here, that's mate. So queen takes, check. Then I go king back. He checks me again. Then I go king back. Queen goes here. And I'm still in the same thing. Same issue. Queen f5 or pawn e5. Pawn e5, queen back. I don't like this. Queen f5, there's queen back. Bishop d6, f4. Knight takes. Yo, I do not like this though. Okay, I'm just going to try to have as many pieces close to my king as possible so that way I can defend. So also, once I play knight takes, I'm automatically threatening to win his queen. Queen h4, I also forgot to look on. If he plays queen h4, he's threatening some checks on h7, and my rooks are not connected, so I cannot play rook h8. Why is this so bad, man? All right, what if I play rook takes d4, hits the queen, and if he check, I just go here? The thing about this is there's no knight checks since my rook guards, and his queen is going to be under attack, which is very important for me because I'm trying my best to trade some pieces off the board. Takes, queen check, king over. There's no more queen checks. There's no good knight checks, so that is indeed a free pawn. Am I getting checkmated though? I have no idea. I'm going to just defend like my life depends on it. The good thing is though, guys, I'm ahead by 3 points. I always explain this to you guys a lot. If you're defending and you're ahead in material and the attack starts getting a bit too spicy, you can start thinking about ways to give back material. For example, worst case scenario, I sack the queen for the 2 minor pieces, and then he's gonna have a queen, I'm gonna have 3 minor pieces. 3 minor pieces are usually better than a queen because it's the same 9 points, but now they can start coordinating with each other. All right, now he plays queen g8 attacking this. Didn't see that at all. I can't develop because this is hanging, my rook is hanging. Okay, king back is not bad, guys. King back is not bad at all. Because now my king is getting a bit safe. I mean, I'm hanging this pawn, but we spoke about this, right? We don't care. We're giving back some material so that way our king is safe. Now I'm guarding this twice. If he plays queen takes, maybe queen g6, try to force the queens off the board. I think I'm chilling here. Or maybe if he takes queen g6, he's going to go back. Rook to d8 also hits the queen. Maybe I should just play bishop to d7. So that way, once I play queen g6, I'm forcing the queens off. Because if it's a case where I'm forcing the queens off, then it's just confirmed that I'm fine. So I'm kind of scared. Kind of want to just do it right now. Like hit the queen right now. Queen goes here. There, it just can't be bishop d7. I think I want to go bishop d7. Like, is there a forcing move? There's bishop here, hits the rook. After the bishop hits the rook, I play rook to g4. It's a bit tricky. But let's just develop. Like, the best thing is always development. Bishop to e3, I can also consider sacking the rook. Because if bishop e3, queen f6, okay, that I didn't see. I wasn't expecting that. I think he wants the bishop on g5. And since offense is the best defense, why not play rook to g4, which hits the queen? And if bishop g5, I can sack, but I actually didn't see that I had to sack. But let's keep defending. At least I'm hitting the queen. And remember, guys, if it's a case where I have to sack back, then big deal. I'm giving back the material because the position is super spicy here. Bishop check. I run my king to the center. Why am I running my king to the center? Because then I'm able to hide on c7. That cannot be too bad. Can't be too bad. All right, so I go here. And then after any rook checks, I go to c7. Very spicy position, guys, but I'm chilling. I think once my king goes to c7, I'm not going to be getting checkmated. And I just need to ensure that I don't fall for any tactics. But in terms of piece activity, I think both our pieces are active, but his rooks aren't really doing anything right now. But he's about to get one of them in the game. This isn't doing anything. But once I swing this rook in the game, every single piece of mine is fine. Okay, he checks. We go back. Okay, that I didn't see. Boxer. Yo, the guy just sacked the rook. Oh. Oh. Wow. Because now if I put my king on a dark square, after takes, my queen is on the same line as his queen. So I'd prefer to put my king on a light square. But if I put the king on the light square, takes, he's gonna check. Can't go on a dark square. Wait. King here, takes, right? If he goes here, I take with the queen. Oh, but then he goes here. Oof. Is this the time where we just need to sack back? I think he just got back the rook. Okay, let's try to hold on to the rook. King here. He takes the rook. I take the rook. He checks. No, let's say he checks here. If he checks there, we can't block. King c7 at that point. And then after he takes my rook, I take the bishop. That would be like best case scenario. King here. Let's try that. King here. If he check, I can also consider blocking with the knight. But once he takes, the knight is pinned, bro. This is crazy. Takes. Check, king up, sack the rook, take the bishop. That's kind of like what I want. But I think if he just checks first, it's just super strong. Well, check, king up. If he takes the rook, I take his bishop. But I think he's just going to take here with check. How is he seeing all of this? This is crazy. All right, now I have to go king up. But his queen is under attack, so he's able to take here first with check. And then maybe just run my king over here. At least if he's not able to take anymore. Okay, that's a check. Come on, bro. You need to run. You need to run or hide or something. Or maybe block with the bishop. If knight check, I'm just going to sack. Block with the bishop. He has no more checks. All right, we're still defending, guys. We're still defending. The knight is not able to move because it loses the queen. You see? You see the difference? If the queen was here and he takes and I takes back, he's winning my queen with some discovered attack. Like, so even when you're defending, your tactics still has to be good because you need to be able to see the tactics that the opponent is trying to do so that way you're able to defend against them. Now I'm attacking his bishop. I mean, the knight is, you could say the knight is pinned. I mean, I don't hate my position. I'm threatening to swing this rook in the game, hit the queen though. Like if that happens, then I'm just fine. Okay, that check I just didn't see, but it shouldn't work because I'm just gonna sack the rook. We spoke about this. We're ahead in material. We start the sacrifices. If he takes, I take the bishop, and I'm ahead by what? 2 pieces? Yeah, that just can't be good. That just can't be good. Now, once I take here, I'm also threatening this. His queen is a bit offside, and I'm ahead by 2 whole entire pieces. I don't really have any time on the clock, but I think I have more than enough time to win this game. My goal from here is just to find ways to force the queens off the board. Because once the queens are off the board, it's just GG's. I think this is GG's, but there's still room for me to, blunder in a little tactic or something. But if the queens are off the board, then it's just GG. So he's gonna try his best not to trade, and I'm gonna try my best to at least keep his queen in an uncomfortable scenario. Okay, he's not trading. Let's keep trying. Still not trading. That's a tempo on the queen though. Ooh, nice move. Because I'm pinning the pawn. Can I sack and then check and then check? Nah, that doesn't work. That doesn't give me anything. Unless I want a draw or something. Okay, queen moves. Let's just pull the rook back. He's also guarding this as well. I'm trying to now applying as much pressure as possible to f2. Because once I'm able to attack f2 a lot, maybe it's going to be a scenario where I sack the rook to trade everything off the board, and then I'm just ahead by a knight. And if it's a case like that, it has to be winning. Assuming these pass pawns are not too strong. Okay, maybe he's trying to do that. The rook guards it though. Actually, there's queen f8, which hits the pawn, pins the pawn, so he's not able to push, and we're applying pressure to f2. Rook comes in, which means if I take, I lose, but the rook no longer guards the square. So now I'm able to take with check, forcing the king to move. That's not a mate though, because the queen guards the square. He resigns. More Benoni defense against 1800 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1800. We're playing some more Benoni defense. Definitely something new on the channel. Pawn c4, we play pawn c5. And then there's basically a bunch of different ways in which white could respond after this, but hopefully we're able to cover everything. So pawn c4, we play c5. If they play d5, we play e6 and we're in the Benoni, but they don't have to do that, right? So it's very important that you know what to do if they decline you going into the Benoni, which is why I didn't really put, for example, e3, which is why I didn't really put this on the channel as yet, because they could play e3, they could play knight f3. So I want you guys to at least understand what happened if they decline. Now, one thing that you could do here is just to take the pawn on d4, and then after they take back, you play d5. Now, what you guys could see is in the future, there's going to be a lot of scenarios where it's very possible I could take on c4 and white is going to be left with an isolated pawn on d4. And then once the opponent has the isolated pawn, we automatically know what the plan is from that. Just simplify the game, bring them to the end game and win. So knight f3, we go knight c6. We're just developing normally here. Usually I do not take on c4 until they move this bishop, That way we could get them to be moving the same pieces more than once in the opening. The thing about this though is I also do not like developing my light squared bishop too far, because once queen to b3 happens, it's going to be too annoying. So I'm going to purposely play e6 here, guys. Yes, I know that I'm blocking out the bishop, but I just want to ensure that the bishop is guarding b7 for the time being. And in the future, the bishop could go either on this diagonal or this diagonal. But if he ever takes on d5, I take with the knight. Now that he plays bishop e2, that's when we take. You see, when I took on c4, I did not take on c4 when the bishop was on f1. I took on c4 when he already invested a move in the bishop. So now that I takes, it's like, okay, we're not necessarily trying to help people to develop their pieces. Now, one thing that could help me to get the advantage here is the fact that the opponent has the isolated pawn. One thing that could help the opponent to get the advantage is to get rid of that isolated pawn or just play very, very active. Because usually whenever someone has an isolated pawn, as you guys could see, they do not have any bad pieces. They only have one bad pawn. So I'm going to try my best to ensure that my opponent does not get rid of his iso pawn. And that's why I'm going to play the move knight b4. So you guys are now witnessing very, 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 very strategic chess here. Once he's not able to advance the isolated pawn, I'm good. Now, what I'm basically doing is something called fixing the weakness. Once your opponent has a weakness, it's very important that you stop them from moving that weakness. So once he's not able to play d5, I'm good. I'm going to go bishop e7 and castle. A6 b5, bishop b7 would be best case scenario, to be honest. Okay, I was not expecting immediate a3, but the purpose of putting the knight on b5 was to ensure that I'm able to fix the weakness. And the best way to fix someone's weakness is to just sit in front of it. Like, now the pawn literally can't move, so I'm really not worried about him getting rid of that isolated pawn. Now I just need to play the long game. You know, it's like, usually this is not a case where, okay, how do we win this game? We can't win the isolated pawn this early. So we have to just focus on putting our pieces on optimal squares, trading as many minor pieces as possible, because simplifying the game means you're trading minor pieces. And if major pieces are coming off while you're doing that, then that's even better. Well, not better, but that's good. But it's best to trade the minor pieces. So he castle, we go bishop e7. The plan is to get my king castled as well. I'm expecting bishop to g5 here. I mean, it's just a very active score for a bishop. I mean, maybe I could have also played the prophylactic h6. He chose to put the bishop on d2. Not sure why. Bishop g5 would have made more sense. Now I'll get my king out the center. All mine, well, not all minor pieces. 3 minor pieces are developed. So you guys know what the plan here is. We want to finish the development, and we want to swing our major pieces in the game. Queen c2 was played, which means his development is complete. I want to go a6, b5, bishop b7. Let's go with that, a6, b5, and then once I'm able to get my rook on the c file, that will also be nice. So he decides to take. I'm not going to take with the pawn, by the way, guys, because then everything that I worked for would just gone out the window. So let's take with the knight, ensure that he keeps the isolated pawn. Even if he takes with the bishop, we take with the queen. Guys, you guys are learning strategic chess here. I really hope you pay attention. Now we're looking on the opponent's last move. There's a little battery that is taking place on my king. And now it's either playing h6 or playing g6. It doesn't really matter too much. If I play h6, I just need to ensure that any sacrifices that he play is not going to work. So if I play h6, maybe he's going to play queen c1 and then try to sacrifice on h6. With that being said, I may play g6 and then weaken my dark squares. And the reason why I'm fine with weakening my dark squares is once he attacks my rook, I'm just going to move. And eventually, I can always fianchet to the bishop. And guess what? If I get the bishop on g7 or f8, that's some more minor pieces being traded off the board. Okay, knight comes in with some aggression. f7 is a bit soft. We also need to ensure that there's no sacrifices on g6. Usually, when they're going for these types of sacrifices, I let them sacrifice one of their pieces. You know, I don't usually accept both sacrifices, but I let them sacrifice one of them. All right, now we're trying to, we're kind of trying to neutralize what's happening here, though. Bishop f6, let's say he sacked the knight. I take, and then after he sacked the bishop, I don't take. I just go here. I mean, there's bishop back, though, so it's kind of tricky. Let's just start trading from now. I may just put the bishop on d7 since it's a bad bishop, just so that way I'm able to swing the rook over to c8. Now the isolated pawn is unprotected. That's a good thing. Okay, queen d2. Maybe he wants to play bishop g5. Like, having the queen on h6 isn't too scary. Unless there's some sacrifices on f7 that I'd have to be on the lookout for. For now, I don't think I have to react too much to that as well. I mean, takes queen takes b5 is my idea, and then bishop to b7. Knight to g5 followed by knight f6 could be scary, but my knight on d5 is currently doing a very good role. So let's go for that. Let's get some more trades in. Knight f7, king f7, queen h7, and I could lose the game. So it's very important that I'm on the lookout for that, guys. These are my focal points, and the opponent is actually applying good amount of pressure to my focal point. So let's start with queen f6, protecting my f7 square. If knight here, well, he's losing the pawn. There's always queen g7. And remember, guys, we're simplifying the game. Simplifying the game is good for us because of his isolated pawn. I want to play b5, bishop b7, one rook on c8, one rook on d8, and then we attack the iso pawn. So once we're able to survive anything that is happening here, the end game is going to be very good for us because of our better pawn structure. Okay, rook e1. I think he wants to swing the rook over here. Let's say rook e4 to h4. Not something that I'm afraid of, though. I can actually just wait on him to do it and then just go queen g7. So Let me finally finish my development. I also think he used the wrong rook. I think this rook belonged on the c file and this rook belonged on the e file. So he's continuing with his idea, rook e4. I go bishop to b7 here, finishing my development. And then once he plays rook h4, applying much pressure to my focal point, then I go queen g7 because I don't mind trading the queens here. If you do trade, I play king takes, and then I'll try to get as much control over these files as possible. I mean, naturally, someone who is trying to attack would try to keep the queens on the board, but I think the d2 square is like the furthest back he could pull the queen. I mean, there's also queen here. Nah, there's no queen here because if he puts the queen on g5, the queen and the knight is now in a pawn fork pattern. I hit him with f6 and I win the game. Okay, so he decided to keep the queens on the board. And now I'm just going to take control over the files. I mean, this rook isn't doing anything. Even though this isn't doing much, let's go rook to c8 first. And then eventually I can go rook to d8. I think his rook is going to be misplaced. Like the rook doesn't belong here. The rook belongs on trying to fight for the files. All right, but let's see. F4. F4, he's really being very aggressive. Now it's even harder for this rook to go back. So you know what I'm going to try to do now? I'm going to try to focus most of my attention in the center. And this is, again, guys, I'm being very strategic here. Whenever someone is attacking you on the flank, you counter-attack in the center. Because now all of their forces are going to be on the flank. So now we go rook to d8. Notice what we're doing, guys. We do not have any bad pieces. The whole time we're playing our games, we're trying to focus on putting our pieces on good scores. And all of those tactics that I'm talking about with pieces on the same line, focal points, removing the guard, unprotected pieces, king safety, like all of those things that I'm talking about, it comes from having your pieces on good squares first. So once your pieces are on good squares, your rooks are on the files, your bishops are on the diagonals, your knight is centralized, then those tactics are going to be appearing. The main weaknesses or the main weakness that is in the opponent's position right now is the iso pawn. Pawn g4 means he really wants to play pawn f5. The rook is always unprotected there. Queen f6, pawn g5 is an idea. I don't want to give him a free tempo though. No, I'm going to try to start targeting his pawn with either knight g6 or knight e7. Let's go with knight e7 since it also defends a bit against pawn f5 since the knight covers the square, and I'm also immediately targeting his pawn. My next move could even be knight c6 because remember, the more we trade, the more we simplify the game, the easier it is going to be for us. Oof, guy doesn't care. He just pushed it. And you know why he doesn't care? Because if I take on d4, my queen and my knight is in a pawn fork pattern. So I actually didn't see that part of it. So I think I have to take here. I mean, there's also queen f6, but then he has g5. So I think I just have to take here. And then after he takes, I'm not able to take because his rook is finally guarding the pawn. All right, still I need to be aware of this fork. Maybe now I should go knight to f6, but then him playing f6 is just so annoying, bro. It's so annoying. I think I'm gonna go back to d5 because I don't want him to play knight f6. There's also takes rook down, which is also very strong. Remember, guys, we do not want this attack to come through. If the attack comes through, then it's hard. Wait, can't I just play knight takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, check, force the king to move? At that point, his rook is gonna swing over very quickly, though. Oh, shoot. My bishop covers the diagonal. What the heck? That's a pawn, buddy. I take, bishop takes, I take with check. That's a pawn. That's kind of crazy, though. It's risky because I'm exposing my king, but I think I had to play that move. I think I just had to find that move. The fact that my queen is on the same line as the king. And guys, by the way, you notice how the light squared bishop that I had just automatically turned into a good piece. There's no king h1, there's no rook block. The king now has to go to, let's say, f2, and then his king is now going to be on the run. I mean, rook to g1 is always going to be a move, though, so I still have to be super careful here. I think both our kings are now, oh my god, tactics alert, because my rook is on the same line as this guy's queen. So this pawn is pinned. If I grab, he's not able to take due to this, which means if I take the knight, I'm assuming he's gonna play rook check. Because even if he plays queen check, I block with the queen and I'm fine. So if I take with the knight, it's a forcing move, by the way. I think rook to g1 is the most testing move. And then I play king to h8. He sacked this rook, I take, there's no checks from the queen. So if I take and he checks and I play king h1, there is no more checks in the position. There is queen to h6 though, which threatens a checkmate. My queen is still gonna be under attack. Oh shoot, he's gonna be threatening two mates though. That's gonna be bad. Yeah, that's gonna be bad. Let's think about it. If I takes, he check. I go here, he goes here, and then he's threatening mate here and here. I can't defend the mate here, so it's not a tactic. I can't defend the mate there. Hmm. Takes check. Really? If I go here, there's queen check and I lose my queen. If I go here, there's queen here and he's threatening mate. The thing about it is I cannot check. Oh, wait, there's a check. I do have a check. I can check him here. So if I check him here, this has to lead to mate, bro. Has to. Let's take. I didn't see that I had a check on c2. There's no way this is not leading to mate if I have this very strong bishop. So if he goes here, I check. And that has to lead to mate. This I did not see. Well, I saw this, but I knew that once I take, he's not going to have any more checks. So I was expecting queen h6 first, but then rook c2 just wins the game. Like, I really spent a lot of time thinking about this. Now that he plays queen g5, again, it has to lead to mate because I have too many checks. All right, let's check him here first. Yeah, let's just check him here first. This guarantees that we bring more pieces in the attack. King can't go here, here, or here. Here, can't go here. So the king kind of has to just go back. And then once the king goes back, that's going to be a checkmate. Yeah, so this was crazy. He blocks with the queen, though, which means we first take the queen. The king still has to go back. And this, my fellow viewers, is just a checkmate. More Benoni against 1900 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1900. Let's play some more Benoni defense. Pawn c4, we go c5. Pawn d5 was quickly played. Let's play e6, and we're now in our very fun, aggressive, complicated Benoni line with this backward pawn on d6. The plan from here is to fianchetto the bishop and castle. e4 is good. f4 is one of the most aggressive theoretical moves, but he plays knight f3, so let's just go bishop g7 and castle. And yes, guys, bishop to g4 was also a nice move. Probably I should have played bishop g4 to ensure that I'm getting rid of this knight, because knight f3 to d2 with the idea of putting the knight on c4 and then targeting d6 is usually a problem. But let's just get the king out the center of the board for the time being. Okay, bishop goes to e2, assuming he wants the castle. Let's put the rook on the file. Start to apply some pressure on e4. He's guarding it twice. We're attacking it twice. So we don't really have much right now. We're going to play the thematic a6, preparing b5. Was expecting them to play a4. No, it's very hard for us to play b5. And the plan for white is usually knight c4, bishop f4, and target my weak pawn. So we have to assume that that is going to come very soon. But since there's no square for this bishop, let's just don't worry about the bishop for now and just play knight d7. Okay, the funny thing about this is I actually don't mind when they play a5 because, for example, rook to b8, I'm still going to play b5. And even though he's going to take, like, my pawn on a6 is going to be weak, the bishop guards the pawn, but his pawn on b2 is going to be weak. So now if he tries the same bishop to f4 idea as b2 becomes too weak. Since he plays f4, I need to be aware of e5, but there's not going to be any e5 anytime soon. Like, I have too many pieces covering that square. Let's just play b5. And then once he takes, we play queen takes or rook takes. Not really sure. I'm just going to play queen takes since it puts the queen on the same diagonal as the king. Yeah, because there's also knight to c4 is still a possibility, guys. Oh boy. Knight c4, pawn e5. There's also some tactical moves with knight c4, queen c7, pawn e5. And then if I take on e5, he plays pawn d6 and attack the queen. Don't think it works. And he saw this and he just got his king out of the way. And because I'm aware that my queen is a bit compromised, let's just pull it back to c7. So once he plays knight c4, it's not a tempo. Now my goal is to target the pawn on e4. If I can just get rid of this bishop, that would be good. Now if he plays knight c4, he's losing the e pawn. So maybe he's going to play bishop f3 first. Yeah, bishop f3. Now I know exactly what his plan is. He wants to play knight c4. So because I know that he wants to play knight c4, I'm going to play the prophylactic rook b4. It prevents knight c4. It's also applying more pressure to e4. Now he has 3 defenders. I have 3 attackers. So it's usually not bad when you're doing the attacking role, but whenever they have the pawns in the center of the board like this, it's usually not really easy to move around your pieces. So I think it's fine for both sides here. It's a complex position, but this is usually what Benoni players want because not anybody can win this. Okay, he's applying more defense to c2. Queen c2 is not bad. Okay, I think I don't mind him playing e5 anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and play knight b5 or knight b6. There's some knight c4 ideas, but I'm trying to get my bishop on g4 to exchange my bishop. The thing about this is though, is my bishop on c8 is actually guarding a6. So maybe I'm actually not going to move that bishop, because if I move this bishop, the pawn on a6 is just too weak at that point. B3. One thing I want you guys to keep in mind is anytime they play b3, just remember that this knight is now pinned. I don't think I'm able to sack though, because if I takes, he takes with the knight. Tactic alert though. Tactic alert though, because the knight is pinned. He wants to play bishop here or here and then trap my rook. So that's also something that I need to keep in mind. Is it a tactic? Let's calculate, guys. No, but then I'm going to sack the rook. Wait, knight takes e4, we get 1 point. Knight takes e4, we sack the rook. If he plays bishop takes e4, the queen and the knight are the only pieces guarding the bishop, so we take this. After queen takes, we take the bishop. We would be successfully ahead by a pawn, but my dark squares are going to be too weak, and then after bishop to b2, I'm probably going to be getting checkmated, so I don't think I want that. All right, guys, I'm going to have to take the complex route then. If that doesn't work, we're going to have to go with bishop g4, leaving a6 unprotected, because if now the rook takes on a6, I'm going to try to take on f3, and then after rook takes, I try to win the pawn. Or if bishop a6, I may leave it so that way if he takes my rook, I take back and then the knight is pinned. But this is usually what happens. Like these are the scenarios that we get ourselves in. If white just keeps everything under control and I just don't have any attack, then I will find myself in trouble. Guys, it's going to get complex because my rook is now kind of trapped. Because I know that if he takes my rook, I'm just going to take back and I'm going to win the knight. So let's just take on f3. Let's just eliminate that bishop. If he takes my rook, I can even take on g2 first with check, put in a little in-between move, and then just take back the bishop. And then his knight is not going to be able to move. But let's... Oh, he took with the pawn, though. He took with the pawn. All right. This is now unprotected. Knight h5 hits the unprotected pawn. We're still aware that it is not good for him to take, because now if he takes, this knight is pinned from two different angles. So all I'm trying to do at this point forward is just counterattack, counterattack, counterattack. Because I'm about to lose a rook, to be honest. Like, so okay, he pulls the knight back. Oh, yo, what a move. Now if I take his rook, he takes my rook, which I shouldn't really care, because I should have lost the rook in the first place, right? So I take his rook, he takes my rook. Now I can't take due to the pin, so I just pull my bishop back, and everybody's just happy. Like, yeah, let's just do this. Let's just trade the rooks. Still gonna be a very complex game. Oh, he's basically saying my rook is still trapped. Okay. All right. Now if he takes my rook, I can't even take back. The knight is unprotected here, so I'm thinking about knight d5. And then if he takes on d5, I take this. But then he's able to take here, and I can't take back. Whoa, what's this? What is this? So currently I'm ahead by the exchange. I'm gonna give back the guy the rook. Let's not be too mean. Maybe I'm gonna take with this pawn, because this is a weak pawn anyways. Knight takes I like though. Knight takes, if he takes, I take back, but I'm assuming he's gonna take here. Maybe rook takes, knight takes. I'm gonna have 1, 2, 3. He's gonna have... Nah, that doesn't make sense. Let's just guard the rook. Let's just give him back the rook. I can't take with the c pawn, so I have to take with the a pawn. All right, so now we take. Everybody's still happy. He has some double pawns. I have weak pawns. My knight on b6 isn't doing much, especially if he's just fully aware of that. There's an unprotected knight on the same line as my rook, because knight d5 is now a real threat. Okay, looks like he saw it, because now the queen guards the knight. But let's apply even more pressure to the knight. So now I have a battery behind the knight. So now I'm still threatening to take on d5. And assuming he saw that, his rook is unprotected. I'm already applying pressure here. So queen to f6 will be applying pressure to his unprotected rook and this pawn on f4. So yes, guys, being able to spot tactical weaknesses, still very important. Now he plays rook a6. If I grab, he takes, I grab the knight, he takes, I take. In the end, he's going to be able to take my pawn. But once he takes the pawn, I'm going to be able to take this pawn, and I'm going to be ahead by a pawn. Based on how things are looking, It's just a pawn, but I'll work with it because it's my backward pawn that he's taking, and my rook is also going to be cutting off his king. His knight is going to be passive. If I'm able to win this pawn, my pawn is going to be 3 moves away from queening, so it cannot be too bad. It can't be too bad. I'm also attacking his rook, so he has to trade. So I don't know why the guy's thinking unnecessarily. So rook takes, we play knight takes. We're ahead by a pawn, and we're happy. Very nice. Why is he thinking, bro? You have to play. Like your time is running out. Play. There's no way to guard the pawn. Now I take, this is going to be a target. If he puts the rook here, I don't really want to take because the winning side don't really want to be trading in the end game. A check I wasn't expecting that should help me to activate my king. And now the pass pawns are rolling up the boards. How does this work? Let's just go king up. I'm just going to activate my king. If I'm able to like win this pawn, then I'm going to be ahead by 2 pawns and that should be easy. His position is also not active because if he plays knight up, I check. He has to block and that's mate. So he has to waste moves with his king. And I can always check him here, then get my rook behind the pawn. So notice what he's trying to do now. He wants to trade the pawns. Like once he push, he's going to be threatening to queen. There's not really much I can do to prevent that though. So I'm going to just allow it. So maybe king here. Check does not lose the rook. And if he takes, I take. But then he goes here, bro. Oh, but then I have knight back. Yeah, it's going all the way down to the wire. I takes, if he goes here, forking me here, I go here, defending everything. And now I have some very, very nice ideas. Very, very nice ideas. Like hitting the knight. His king will not tactics alert. Tactics alert. Remember to look for your forcing move, guys. And if you're able to see pawn fork patterns and knight fork patterns, then it's going to be a point when you're able to create these patterns. So, for example, if I sacrifice my rook on f1, the king has to take, and then his king and his rook is now in a knight fork pattern. Once the king moves, I takes. Now, what I calculated was his king was not in the square. That was wrong. But because I'm ahead by a pawn, it's still just completely winning. Like he's gonna try to protect the pawn. I'll just sacrifice this pawn. And now we're gonna be using the fox in the chicken coop technique. Okay, maybe I could have done this a bit cleaner. But remember, guys, if you're ahead in material in a king and pawn endgame, then you have a very, very, very high chance of the game just winning. Okay, king here, he's gonna go here. So let's go back. And if he goes here, then I go here. All right, it's getting very tricky now, guys. Don't want to mess this up. Pawn push takes, takes, takes. That's not gonna queen. King over, there's pawn push takes, takes. Okay, let's try king over. Anytime he plays pawn push, I'm gonna push. So king over again, king over again. And if he plays king here, we go here. Okay, okay. Did I mess this up? Wait, this is the square. This is the square. So if I play g5, takes, 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 this is my square. Backside, so we're not in, I'm not gonna be in the square, he's not gonna be in the square. So if I push, he's gonna push. Yo, did I just mess this up playing fast? And if I go here, he goes here. Okay, let me try something else. Pawn push. Once I play pawn push, I have the opposition. This is me risking to lose. Luckily, he does not have a lot of time. But once he goes here, no, I push. That just cannot work, though. That just can't work. Yo, how did I mess up this game, bro? I completely messed this up. I'm gonna have to flag him. Okay, I'm gonna have to just flag him. I have to be careful though, because I can also just lose this game if I'm not careful. Okay, let's try this. Okay, he has 6 seconds on the clock. This is me risking to lose, guys. This is now lost. Okay, you know what? I'll just give him a draw. I'll give him a draw. I just offered him a draw. I'll give him a draw. Good game. More Benoni defense against 2000 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 2000. We're ending off with a banger of a Benoni defense. Hopefully, it's an aggressive Benoni and not a positional one. But let's see what this guy plays. All right, c4, we play c5. What will we get? d5, e3, knight f3, which means the whole idea of trying to take and then play d5 doesn't really make much sense anymore. I could still try e6. I could still try e6 to simply defend my pawn, actually. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play e6 so that way I'm guarding the pawn. And okay, now he plays e3. But it's the same thing. Like if I take, I'm assuming he's going to play knight takes. If I play knight c6 now, I think no, then he's going to push and then he's going to gain the tempo on my knight. So I think I'm just going to play d5 here. Maybe I'm going to be the one who gets the isolated pawn. Who knows? But again, guys, we have to understand that having an ISO pawn has pros and cons. I personally don't like to play with an ISO pawn, but it has its pros and its cons. So once I have the ISO pawn, I try to focus on the pros and try not to, trade into an endgame or something like that. But the position that we have here is completely symmetrical, as you guys could see. Like all the pieces are exactly where. For example, he plays knight c3, I play knight c6. Still very, very symmetrical. And if I was white, I would take on d5 so that way I try to isolate the pawn. Like I have the option of taking with the knight though, but I may just take with the pawn because one thing I know when it comes to isolated pawn is if the knight is guarding it, then it's fine if there's no bishop g5. And I used to play moves like a3 because my plan is to take on c5 and then play b4. And since he played a3, I'm just going to take on d4. No, he's going to be the one with the ISO pawn. But once if he takes with the pawn, I'm not gonna take on d4. He took with the knight though, so he just don't want the ISO pawn. With that being said, let's just keep developing our pieces. Bishop e7, castle the king. The most normal chess here. You know that I was expecting bishop d3. Like if I takes, then take, then he gets the ISO pawn. That point I castle, maybe he goes bishop g5. I'm also thinking about knight to e5 hits the bishop, and that gives me the bishop here, because if I put the knight here, he can't just save the bishop, or maybe he can. But let's try knight e5. I'm moving the same pieces more than once in the opening, guys, so very controversial move. But if I'm able to get the bishop here, that's not going to be too bad at all. Okay, guy just castled. Like, he was like, you know what, just take it, bro. It's fine. But what if I take with a pawn? There's a little trick here. He's 2,000. I'm assuming he saw it. But if I take with the pawn, I think he's able to take with the bishop. And then after I takes, he checks and then pick up at the knight. At that point, I'll just block. Queen takes. There's rook c8 tempo. I can castle. Let's try that. Let's take with the pawn. If he pulls the bishop back then, though, he's just not seeing it. But yeah, he saw it. He just sacked the bishop. One side takes, queen a4, and he wins it back. None of us has any isolated pawn. In fact, the position is very, very symmetrical. Before I play rook c8, let me get my king out the center of the board. The only difference is I have the bishop here. Like, if you guys are looking on the pawn structure, it's very, very symmetrical. And once the pawn structure is symmetrical like this, it's actually going to be very hard for someone to win, because usually when it comes to planning, we start thinking about pawn breaks, but pawn breaks are harder in a symmetrical position, as you guys could see. I mean, he needs to develop, but that's not the square for the bishop. He just pulls the queen back because he knows that I'm going to swing the rook in the game. And since he has a very strong knight in the center, I'm heavily considering playing e5 to chase the knight away. But after knight f3, my pawn is just going to become a target. Bishop g4, h3, bishop back, g4. Maybe I should sack. Yeah, probably sack is not too bad at that point. Let's try this. This is me trying to be aggressive, guys. The d file is also open, so I'm also expecting him to attack my queen. Okay, that's not where I was expecting him to put the knight. What's this? Where's the knight going after he puts the knight on b5? Let's just assume that I play a6 and attack the knight. Where's the knight going, Mr. 2000? Mr. Solo? That was the name of my coach, by the way, guys. Yeah, he found out that he blundered. Yeah, we take all free material. And the funny thing is, if he play, oh my, tactics alert. Tactics alert, bro. Because he thinks my bishop is pinned. Is it really pinned though? Since if I take the knight, it hits the queen. Watch this. If I take the knight, he takes my queen. I take his queen. If I take the knight, he takes my bishop. I take his rook and I win the game. And because I'm ahead in material, who is not going to want to trade here? I think this is winning material, by the way, because if he takes my queen and I take his queen, no, I'm just ahead by two whole entire piece. Yeah, now we're just trading, but I'm ahead by two pieces, bro. This is crazy. All right, before he wants to develop the bishop, I'm gonna take the easy route out. I mean, that's a pawn, by the way, guys, but let's just take the easiest route out. You're ahead in material, trade the pieces off the board. You cannot lose when the guy just have no pieces to play with. So he moves the bishop. Now we trade. He has to take with the rook. Yes, I'm gonna lose this pawn, but because I'm trading, the game is now just very easy for us to play. Pawn to b5 to ensure he's not able to move the pawns. And I'm gonna try to trade the bishops. I'm gonna try to get my bishop around here, maybe get my knight on this square to attack the pawn. All right, h3. Let's go knight e4. I want to play bishop f6, trying to trade the bishops off the board, but I'm also trying to play maybe knight d6 to c4, knight d2 to c4. At that point, he's not going to be able to guard this pawn. This is very easy conversion. He resigns.